Chapter 2468. Yi Shiwen's attacks were infused with the power of thunder, and each attack was more terrifying than the last. The power of thunder crazily destroyed the muscles on Xue Xiaohua's body, causing his muscles to collapse all of a sudden. One of his arms exploded in an instant, and the severe pain made his entire face pale in an instant. He was drenched in cold sweat. His whole body flew out again. Not only was his arm broken, but more importantly, he only felt that his entire body's internal organs were about to be crushed by a huge force. What kind of terrifying power was this? He looked at Yi Shiwen with disbelief in his eyes. Was this really a human being? Was he not a monster? As far as he knew, there did not seem to be such a powerful physique among humans. It was simply too terrifying. Don't you go too far. Terrifying spiritual power constantly erupted from Xue Xiaohua's body. Every cell in his body was evolving into a world, and the power of the world was all condensed and gathered in his body. He actually wanted to use this sky spill world to integrate his martial arts incarnation into it. He also had a martial arts incarnation, but he would not take it out unless it was the most crucial moment. He had originally wanted to keep it as a trump card, which he might be able to use in the finals. Who knew that the first match would be so miserable? The first match had already put him in such a sorry state. Do you think I will give you this chance? Yi Shiwen's figure was like a bolt of lightning, constantly flashing in the sky. Every time he flashed, he would get closer to Xue Xiaohua. Almost in an instant, he had once again arrived in front of Xue Xiaohua. Behind him, a thunder chain almost splashed out. Behind him, it was like a peacock spreading its tail. Many thunder spells suddenly broke out and blasted out in an instant. Boom! Xue Xiaohua flew again. His chest was badly mutilated, and he did not know how many of his bones were broken by the power of thunder. He was not willing to give up. He had not really brought out his final strength. This deadly scholar is so strong and he is ruthless. He is definitely not soft-hearted. He did not give Xue Xiaohua a chance to integrate martial arts incarnation. Someone exclaimed. Everyone could clearly see that Xue Xiaohua wanted to integrate martial arts incarnation, but it was suddenly defeated by Yi Shiwen. Such a will could not be said to not be tenacious, nor was he someone who would be cruel and merciless. In the eyes of everyone, Xue Xiaohua had become a sandbag, constantly being blasted away by Yi Shiwen in the sky, and he could not even land. It was simply terrifying. Yi Shiwen had the advantage of being one step ahead, and he used his speed to turn this advantage into a complete advantage, constantly using Xue Xiaohua as a sandbag, hanging him in midair. Aren't you very arrogant? Didn't you want to cripple my martial arts? Then let me see. Yi Shiwen's arrogant voice resounded from the field. His voice was somewhat relaxed and at ease. Obviously, the situation was completely under his control. So, he didn't need to worry at all. In fact, he didn't even need to use his full strength. Xue Xiaohua lost the initiative and now completely became a sandbag. I can't accept this. I haven't even used my martial Dao incarnation. Seeing that he was about to be defeated, Xue Xiaohua couldn't help but roar crazily. Originally, most of his insolence was a disguise to deceive others. He was very scheming, but now all his pride had been completely defeated by Yi Shiwen. He could only constantly roar to express his current mood. I also want to be your Sky Spill World's incarnation, but I'm afraid there's no time. I don't have time to waste on you. After Yi Shiwen blasted Xue Xiaohua away again, a thunder dragon halberd appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. He swung the halberd. In an instant, countless thunderbolts splashed out like immortal light. In an instant, they turned into a thunder dragon and fiercely stared at Xue Xiaohua. Boom! Xue Xiaohua's body ferociously slammed into the arena with a loud bang. The impact had actually caused the arena to shatter into pieces. It must be known that this arena had been continuously reinforced by the seniors of the ancient Phoenix realm. The intense battle just now hadn't caused any damage to the arena. But now, the arena had actually been smashed into pieces by a single strike. Everyone felt a toothache just by looking at it. If it fell on their bodies, they would probably be in so much pain that they wanted to die. However, at this time, everyone was no longer paying attention to Xue Xiaohua. His body had already been soaked in blood and was bleeding profusely. Yi Shiwen's Thunder Dragon halberd firmly nailed him to the ground, and he himself stood in mid-air, like an ancient great emperor. In the eyes of everyone, he was extremely terrifying. This person's Thunder Dao cultivation has reached an incredible level. At least in the Eternal Realm, it is almost difficult to find someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him, let alone surpass him. The Deadly Scholar, from now on, his name will also become one of the names on the list of the major forces. I didn't expect that such a peerless figure like Xue Xiaohua would actually be defeated. Moreover, he was defeated by such an almost unknown person. Yi Shiwen stepped on the void step by step and walked down. Then, he walked to Xue Xiaohua's side and pulled out the Thunder Dragon halberd. A mass of light descended from the sky and Xue Xiaohua was teleported away. There was no doubt that Yi Shiwen had won this match. As for Xue Xiaohua, he went to the side to heal his injuries. For an Eternal Realm expert, unless he really killed his opponent, he could still recover. Of course, his vitality would definitely be damaged. After that, he would definitely need to replenish a lot of heavenly treasures. This was not a problem that Yi Shiwen needed to worry about. It was already very good that he did not kill his opponent. He took a look. He was the third person to defeat his opponent. He was not considered the last, nor was he the fastest. The first person was Ji Renwang. He still felt that this person was unfathomable. Until now, there was no way to really find out his depth. It could almost be said that he won the first match without any pressure. It was even easier than Yi Shiwen. His opponent was Corpse Hidden. Corpse Hidden did not use too much strength to defeat his opponent before. He did not even come out of his coffin. However, in the battle with Ji Renwang, it could be said that he used all kinds of means. He used all kinds of terrifying methods of the Corpse King. Heaven and earth change. However, he was still completely suppressed by Ji Renwang. It seemed that Ji Renwang had the means and magical power to suppress the corpse transformation. Seeing Yi Shiwen's gaze, his face revealed a somewhat inexplicable smile. Although they were separated by different arenas, it was not prohibited to watch each other. However, this was obviously a privilege for those who finished early. The earlier they finished, the more things they could see, and the more useful they would be. The second was none other than Ao Chaozong. His opponent was none other than Ao Chaozong. His opponent was none other than the Vajra Wood. Both of them engaged in a great hand-to-hand battle. Both of them were existences that cultivated their physical bodies to the extreme. Ao Chaozong himself was a supreme genius of the Dragon Clan who specialized in his physical body. Diamond wood was also a very hard wood. It was extraordinary. The battle between both of them ended with Ao Chaozong's victory. Although he looked a bit embarrassed, Yi Shiwen's intuition told him that Ao Chaozong had not used his full strength. Although Diamond Wood was powerful, it was unable to force Ao Chaozong to use his true strength. However, he was having a headache now. He was only ranked third. Only 2 people would win the last round. It seemed that he could not give up after this. As for the other 2 people who were still fighting, one was the young Kuan Peng and the other was Yuan Hong. Both of them had transformed into their true forms. The battle between an extremely terrifying bird and a violent ape that could wreak havoc in the heavens and earth was constantly exciting. Both races were very powerful races. Needless to say, the Kuan Peng was the leader of the 10 great vicious birds and the descendant of the ancient demon master. However, Yuan Hong had an extraordinary origin as well. He was one of the 4 ancient chaotic monkeys. This race was very powerful. Although they were few in number, they were not weak. Up until now, he had not been able to defeat his opponent. Both sides were enough to shock everyone. The young Kuan Pung had come in his true form, but he had only cultivated for a short period of time. Everyone could see that. However, with his extraordinary talent, he had already broken through to this stage. On the other side, Yuan Hong was not in his best condition. This was only a clone. Therefore, this battle was particularly interesting. On the other side, the battle between Yi Wudi and Feng Zihao was in full swing. Originally, both of them had a grudge against each other. Everyone had thought that Yi Shiwen hadn't appeared. So, Yi Shiwen's good brother had been regarded as Yi Shiwen's representative. And now, he had been drawn to fight against Feng Zihao in the first match. It was hard to say whether there was something fishy going on. Clearly, the ancient Phoenix realm was very confident that they could defeat Yi Wudi in the first battle. However, they did not expect that Yi Wudi would be so much more difficult to deal with than they had imagined. Yi Wudi had only recently become a god, and Feng Zihao had become a god tens of thousands of years ago. The two were not on the same level. Now that they could not defeat him, Yi Wudi naturally became anxious. The battle became even more intense. Yi Wudi was at a slight disadvantage. Tens of thousands of years of cultivation gave Feng Zihao a slight advantage. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. If he had participated in this battle with his true form, the one to fight Feng Zihao would not have been Yi Wudi, but himself. However, the two were still fighting. It was hard to say who would win in the end. There was no obvious difference in strength between the two sides. Both sides' inheritances were extremely impressive. Feng Zihao's inheritance from the ancient Phoenix realm had never been broken since the era of the Phoenix ancestor. Yi Wudi was not bad either. His various techniques had the shadow of the ancient demon emperor. Neither side gave way. Yi Shiwen watched for a while and could not help but laugh. This guy is actually using someone else as a stepping stone, a whetstone. He finally saw that Yi Wudi was also planning to use Feng Zihao as a whetstone. Others might not understand Yi Wudi, but he did. This was a little interesting. Chapter 2469. Compared to Feng Zihao's tens of thousands of years of cultivation, Yi Wudi's skills were undoubtedly much weaker. They weren't even on the same level. But Yi Wudi could fight with Feng Zihao. It was normal for him to be at a disadvantage. Feng Zihao, who had few opponents in his generation, couldn't do anything to Yi Wudi. That was the problem in itself. But compared to Feng Zihao, Yi Wudi's biggest advantage was that he hadn't been cultivating for long, so he had a lot of room for improvement. It could be seen in a short time that Feng Zihao hadn't made much progress, but Yi Wudi was constantly getting stronger. His strength was also increasing bit by bit. This was the momentum of a reversal. Now, only the two sides hadn't decided a winner. But soon, the first to be decided was Yuan Hong and Kuanpeng. Both were fierce beasts. Once they fought, the sky would fall and the earth would crack. But in the end, Yuan Hong won. Kuanpeng's bloodline was very powerful, but in terms of age, it wasn't even a fraction of Yuan Hong's age. There was also a huge difference in experience. The fact that Xiao Chen was able to last until now had already shocked many people. This was especially so for Yuan Hong, who had an ugly expression on his face. Against a junior's junior, Xiao Chen had actually defeated him with just a single move. Although it wasn't his real body, it was still embarrassing enough. At least, it was so for him. He only won by one move. If they fought to the death, the result would be hard to say. Everyone was well aware of this situation as well. Therefore, even though Kuanpeng was defeated, everyone still thought highly of him. He was too young. Even if his opponent wasn't his real body, it wasn't a disgrace. Moreover, if he was given tens of thousands of years, it would be hard to say who would win. Young Kuanpeng, on the other hand, did not have too many emotions. Ever since he knew that Yi Shiwen had arrived, he had let go of his worries. He did not have too many thoughts and did not insist. Otherwise, he would definitely fight to the death with Yuan Hong. Now, winning or losing was no longer his first concern. After young Kuanping was defeated, everyone's eyes fell on the last match. The battle between Yi Wudi and Feng Zihao had entered an even more intense stage. Yi Wudi continued to absorb battle experience. Perhaps he hadn't fought many experts of this level, so he was at a loss at first. However, he was improving very quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just when everyone thought that the battle between the two would continue, a bell suddenly rang out from Yi Wudi's body, instantly defeating the unprepared Feng Zihao. Everyone was stunned. They never thought that Yi Wudi would defeat Feng Zihao in such a way. That bell sound, could it be the Eastern Emperor bell? Someone gasped and said. Rumor had it that someone had actually used the Eastern Emperor bell. That was why the restoration of the ancient heavenly court was so smooth, and why so many ancient tribes and powers acknowledged the existence of the ancient heavenly court. However, that was only a legend. No one had actually seen it. Moreover, no one thought that Yi Wudi would actually bring the Eastern Emperor bell out. That was an important treasure of the ancient heavenly court, and it should be in the depths of the ancient heavenly court. If it was used here, it would be too wasteful. It was like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. It can't be. For this martial arts competition, he even brought the Eastern Emperor bell. Isn't he afraid that the ancient Phoenix realm will take it away? Someone said quietly. There was no need to mention the fame of the Eastern Emperor bell in the heavens and earth. However, it had disappeared a long time ago. Therefore, many people had only heard of it and had never seen it before. Later on, there were many forces that used the name of the ancient heavenly court to swindle people. However, none of them succeeded. That was because they did not have the most important Eastern Emperor bell. Although no one knew where they had obtained a bit of inheritance, they were unable to obtain the recognition of everyone. The Eastern Emperor bell played a huge role in Yi Wudi's rapid recognition as the master of the ancient heavenly court. No, that's not right. That's not the Eastern Emperor bell. It's just a talisman condensed by the Eastern Emperor bell. It has a part of the Eastern Emperor bell's power, but it's not the real Eastern Emperor bell. Feng Nantian said regretfully. Just now, the outcome of the battle had been decided. His first reaction was not to check the extent of Feng Zihao's injuries, but to check Yi Wudi's situation. It was the Eastern Emperor bell. Who wouldn't be tempted by it? The might of the Eastern Emperor bell was boundless. If this Dao tool wanted to leave in other places, who would be able to stop it? However, this was the ancient Phoenix realm. It wasn't impossible for it to stop anyone in the ancient Phoenix realm. Using various secret techniques, it was still possible to keep the Eastern Emperor bell. There was no need to mention the importance of the Eastern Emperor bell. If the ancient Phoenix realm could have another clan guarding treasure, then the luck of the ancient Phoenix realm would increase by a lot. Who would dare to look down on the ancient Phoenix realm? The reason why the Emperor clan, Ji family, was so powerful was because they had a lot of Dao tools. They had so many emperors, far surpassing the other powers. The reason why the martial sect was so powerful was also because they had two supreme Dao tools. These were precedents. Even if they had a falling out with the ancient heavenly court in the end, so what? Without the Dao tools, the ancient heavenly court was a toothless tiger. He had nothing to be afraid of. Unfortunately, in the end, he also saw that Yi Wudi had only brought the Eastern Emperor Bell Wave's talisman. It was considered a trump card, but it did not have the Eastern Emperor Bell that he had been looking forward to. Yi Wudi still had basic rationality. He did not lose his rationality. What a pity! However, this Feng Zihao was defeated. He was defeated by this damned Yi Wudi. Next time, let Yi Wudi deal with Ji Renwang. Feng Nantian ordered. Just as Yi Shiwen had guessed, such an important matter, how could Feng Nantian allow it to be out of his control? Everything was under his control. Even the opponents of these 3 rounds were under his control. Otherwise, how could Yi Wuti and Feng Zihao meet so coincidentally? He wanted Feng Zihao to teach Yi Wuti a lesson. At the same time, in his opinion, Yi Wuti, who had cultivated for the shortest time, seemed to be the easiest to deal with. Even though Yi Wuti's background was not small, there were always strong and weak. Even a persimmon had to be picked on. Who knew that Yi Wuti actually had such a trump card? He has already used his trump card once. I don't believe that he can defeat Ji Renwang with this again. Yi Wuti's inheritance is no small matter. However, Ji Renwang's inheritance is not the slightest bit inferior to the inheritance of martial sect. Even our ancient phoenix realm has to look sideways, Feng Nantian said coldly. After the first round ended, there was a break for a while. Then, the second round finally began. Yi Shiwen was aware of the problem. Under normal circumstances, each round should start immediately. In this case, the earlier the round ended, the less the loss, and the more cost-effective it would be. However, the first round didn't do this. He could also guess the reason. It was because of Feng Zihao. Feng Zihao was not only the last one to finish, but he had also been seriously injured by the talisman puppet of the Eastern Emperor Bell. This was to buy time for Feng Zihao. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about it because he had absolute confidence that no one could stop him from reaching the top. No one could stop him from taking away Hua Menghan. Soon, his second opponent was teleported over. This person was none other than Corpse Hidden. A coffin was engraved with an extremely dark talisman. It was exuding a very strange yin qi. In an instant, countless yin qi rushed out from between the heaven and the earth. All of these yin qi emerged, and covered the entire space between the heaven and the earth. Another domain expanded in a flash, and the strength of the hidden corpse suddenly erupted. It seemed that the hidden corpse couldn't wait any longer after losing the first round. So, he wanted to win this round. A dead man like you also wants to compete for the championship of the martial arts competition for a spouse? What a joke! Yi Shiwen coldly said. He didn't have a good impression of these people. It didn't matter whether they were forced to deal with him or not. He didn't have a good impression of them either. After all, Hua Menghan was his wife. This was a well-known fact. The ancient Phoenix world had fallen out with him. So, it was their own business. However, these people had clearly ignored him by participating in this martial arts competition. Clatter, clatter! In the blink of an eye, chains shot out from the coffin like spider's silk, instantly forming a huge net in the sky. It was boundless, and seemed as if it was going to lock down everything. This was the most terrifying part. This big net was faintly in line with the Great Tao. It resonated with the Great Tao. It seemed as if it would seal Yi Shiwen in an instant. Still not coming out? Hiding your head but showing your tail. Who do you think you are? Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. He took a step forward, and the power of countless thunderbolts gushed out from his body. A sea of thunder and lightning formed around him. The Thunder Dragon halberd appeared in his hand, and he bombarded it towards the sky. Bang! Yi Shiwen's Thunder Dragon halberd fiercely collided with those chains. And those chains were bombarded into pieces on the spot. The sky shattered into pieces. It seemed as if it had suddenly turned upside down, and the cracks spread out in all directions of the arena. Yi Shiwen's figure flashed unceasingly in the sky. He then slashed towards the coffin. The hidden corpse in the coffin didn't try to dodge. Clang! A violent collision sound was heard. The Thunder Dragon halberd and the coffin collided, and sparks splashed in all directions. Needless to say, the Thunder Dragon halberd in Yi Shiwen's hand was a middle-grade divine tool. It was very good. Especially, it complemented his thunder technique. It complemented each other, and its might had doubled. However, it had failed to split the coffin into two halves. There's something strange about this coffin. Yi Shiwen immediately realized that there might be a big problem in this coffin. Then, he saw a sharp claw coming out of the coffin on the spot. It then fiercely clawed towards Yi Shiwen at an extremely fast speed. In fact, it was going straight towards his heart. Chapter 2470. Schwa! A loud sound was heard, and a strange, sharp claw suddenly appeared in the void. It stretched out from the coffin, and directly grabbed Yi Shiwen's chest. "Your heart is mine!" A hoarse and low voice suddenly burst in the surroundings. "You want to kill me? You are far from qualified as a loser." Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped out. He did not avoid it, but instead faced it head-on. Behind him, an endless power of thunder suddenly broke out, and the Yin Qi was instantly smashed. The Thunder Dragon halberd appeared in his hand, and it directly slashed towards the big hand that was grabbing him. Bang! There was a loud collision sound. Yi Shiwen blocked this sharp claw at the critical moment. At the same time, the Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand blocked it. The galaxy shattered, and the world seemed to be turned upside down. And at this time, Yi Shiwen had already taken advantage of the situation and rushed to the front of this coffin. The speed was so fast that even the space was distorted. Some of the weaker people outside the arena wanted to forcibly use their divine thoughts to deduce the series of movements just now, but they had a feeling of wanting to vomit blood. This kind of power and the use of the laws completely exceeded the limits of what they could bear. It almost instantly disrupted the magic power in their bodies, causing the magic power in their bodies to go berserk. They felt like they were going to go berserk. "So fast, I can't keep up at all. What kind of movement technique is this? It's so fast," someone said with a mouthful of blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. Some people looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. They did not expect Yi Shiwen's speed to be so fast. This was completely different from what they saw in the last game. People who practiced thunder techniques were often very fast. They were all very clear about this. This was already a convention. People who practiced thunder techniques were often very fast. In the last game, Yi Shiwen's speed was already very fast. It could almost be said that he completely suppressed Xue Xiaohua, but compared to this time, it was simply insignificant. Everyone thought that this was Yi Shiwen's limit. After all, in the last battle, Yi Shiwen showed a terrifying cultivation of the flesh and spirit, and completely crushed Xue Xiaohua. Who would have thought that it was far from the limit, but Yi Shiwen had restrained himself. "I've never seen such a movement technique before. It's too fast. I know a little about movement techniques related to the lightning attribute, but why haven't I seen it before? Could it be another hidden force that hasn't appeared in the world?" There were even more ancient deities that were completely shocked. Even the experienced and knowledgeable old antiques had never heard of this. It was clear that this movement technique was indeed extremely rare. Many of the old-timers were shocked. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen had already launched his attack. The Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand erupted with astonishing power in the void. It transformed into a long dragon, and directly bombarded the coffin. The power of lightning dissipated on the surface of the coffin, as if it was unable to do anything to the coffin. Who would have thought that the power of lightning would actually rush in through the cracks of the coffin at lightning speed, once again forming a long lightning dragon, and violently exploding. Rumble! A huge explosion came from the inside of the coffin. This was a terrible explosion, and the coffin suddenly broke open, revealing a figure inside. His whole body was scorched black, as if he had been struck by lightning and roasted by fire. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one thought that Yi Shiwen would actually use this method to break open the coffin. This method was completely different from Jirenwang's method of breaking open the coffin. It could be said that each had its own merits, but Yi Shiwen's bold and imaginative ideas during the battle had completely shocked them. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally saw the appearance of this hidden corpse. It was a man who looked about 30 years old. He was tall and had an extremely powerful aura around his body. He didn't know where he came from during his lifetime, but he was very terrifying. "You dare to force me to break open the coffin?" the corpse said coldly, and his tone was filled with anger. "So what, do you think that no one can break your tortoise shell? Do you think that you can be arrogant and despotic by hiding inside? Yi Shiwen said coldly, and his spirit was threatening. At this moment, his image in the hearts of everyone was that of a domineering young hero. You are courting death? The hidden corpse roared in a low voice. Then, his figure pounced towards Yi Shiwen like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. He instantly pounced towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. He brought along an earth-shattering corpse energy and an extremely formidable power. At this time, Yi Shiwen directly used the flickering thunder steps, and in a flash, his movements were agile and ethereal, and no one knew where he would appear next. Boom! 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 The corpse used all kinds of methods, but was unable to do anything to Yi Shiwen. His movements were always in the air, and he was completely unable to catch Yi Shiwen. What kind of agility technique is this? The corpse was furious, and was unable to catch Yi Shiwen, which made him feel humiliated. Die for me, I don't care what kind of agility technique you have, in front of me, you will die. The corpse roared, and his hands condensed into fists, and directly blasted out. The fist intention condensed, and turned into all kinds of strange phenomena, and immediately, an upside-down world appeared. This world was filled with endless corpse chi, and zombies were running rampant, and instantly expanded outwards, shrouding Yi Shiwen. Corpse world descends. The terrifying magic power of the corpse turned into a terrifying world, and this world was condensed by him. This world was his domain, and along the way, no one knew how many powerful opponents he had devoured, and those defeated opponents also became nourishment for his corpse world, nourishing his corpse world, making it even more terrifying. Courting death, a dead man wants to counterattack? Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. His palms suddenly split apart, and thunder chains rushed out from the gaps between his fingers. They turned into a terrifying attack and blasted into the corpse world. Boom! The two ultimate skills fiercely collided, and in the chaos, the corpse chi and the power of thunder raged everywhere. I didn't expect this unknown life-stealing scholar to be so tyrannical. Defeating Xue Xiaohua is definitely not a fluke, and even facing the corpse, he is not at a disadvantage. He has hidden himself so deeply. I originally thought that the strength of the corpse was not the strongest, but at least one of the best, just that he had encountered the extremely terrifying Ji Ren Wang, but besides Ji Ren Wang, he should be the strongest. But who would have thought that even this life-stealing scholar is not a match for him? Bang! Amidst the endless storm, the corpse was sent flying upside down, and the blood at the corner of his mouth couldn't stop flowing. His chest was scorched black, and his flesh had been split open, and blood was flowing out. The outcome of the fight has been decided, and the corpse is actually at a disadvantage. On the cloud platform, some big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm saw this scene, and couldn't help but be surprised. The life-stealing scholar, a name that had never been heard of before, was much stronger than what he had shown. The corpse roared and revealed the true appearance of a zombie, with a green face and fangs. He was different from an ordinary zombie, and zombies were born and raised by the earth, but he was raised by a human. He still retained many memories of his previous life, so most of the time, he was no different from when he was alive, but only at this time, he would reveal his true form as a zombie. In midair, he shattered the void with one foot and stabilized his body, and instantly launched a counterattack, intending to kill Yi Shiwen on the spot. His stature was tall, and he blasted his fists with great strength. It was very terrifying, and the fist energy distorted the space, transforming it into a world of zombies, and devoured everything. Yi Shiwen wasn't inferior in the slightest. He also blasted his fists, and gave tit for tat, and didn't give in. At this time, everyone finally saw the confrontation between these two people. It was very terrifying, and the fist energy of these two people collided. And it directly created a spider-web-like crack in the sky, and spread across the entire arena in an instant. It looked very spectacular, but the most terrifying thing was that this was only a confrontation of pure strength. The control of these two people's strength had reached the pinnacle in this attack, and hadn't leaked out. Instead, they bombarded each other's body. Thump, thump, thump. Someone retreated, and this person was none other than the corpse. He retreated again and again. He had suffered a big loss in this confrontation with Yi Shiwen, and had suffered a big loss. The radiance of thunder and lightning wound around his right arm, and took the form of a thunder dragon, and rushed straight towards his head to bite. His entire arm was charred black in an instant, and had been swallowed by the impact of Yi Shiwen's thunder power. The corpse almost instantly cut off his arm to prevent the thunder dragon from continuing to rush towards him. Blood continued to drip down, and he had suffered a big loss. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's body was also raging with corpse energy, but this corpse energy couldn't really cover Yi Shiwen's body at all. The power of thunder on Yi Shiwen's body was the extreme yang, and it was the nemesis of this extreme yin and evil energy. It had completely restrained this corpse energy. The corpse looked at Yi Shiwen, and didn't dare to launch an attack at will. The attack just now had made him thoroughly understand the terror of this man in front of him. His martial power was unfathomably deep, and he could also feel that the strength in front of him was definitely not the bottom line of this man. He was unwilling. He had gone all out, but the opponent hadn't even used his full strength. This was simply a kind of humiliation. What was more terrifying was that Yi Shiwen's power had completely restrained his own power. Although it was said that it was difficult to completely restrain one's power after reaching a certain level, the power of the extreme yin could also restrain the power of the extreme yang, but this kind of attribute restraint still existed. He wasn't strong enough to completely ignore the opponent, because Yi Shiwen was also very strong. He stared at Yi Shiwen, and there seemed to be countless conspiracies flashing in his eyes. In the end, he could only clench his teeth and spit out a few words. "I admit defeat." Suddenly, there was an uproar. Chapter 2471. What, he actually admitted defeat? Everyone was stunned, as if afraid that they had misheard. Everyone quieted down, for fear that they had misheard. Corpse concealment actually admitted defeat. This was simply a huge anecdote. Even in the face of Jiren Wang, he had fought until the last moment, and had even said that he would surrender. However, in the face of Yi Shiwen, he actually gave up and admitted defeat. What the hell was going on? Could it be that Yi Shiwen was actually more terrifying than Jiren Wang? No one believed such a judgment. After all, compared to Yi Shiwen, Jiren Wang had been famous for many years, a true supreme master of the middle generation, one of the strongest under the titled king level. Although it was only an avatar, but it should be the strongest, no one could compare. Even Yi Shiwen was somewhat stunned. He was just about to attack again, but he saw Shi-Ing admit defeat? Could it be that the battle with Jiren Wang was too much for him? But he didn't care so much. He could save a lot of effort by admitting defeat, and it would be very important for him to win in the future. A group of light swept down, wrapping Shi-Ing in it. Shi-Ing deeply looked at Yi Shiwen. For him, he also wanted to fight to the death, but in fact, there was no such condition. He came here to participate in the martial arts competition, to a large extent, because of the sex arrangement, but he himself was not that interested, but he also didn't want to deal with it, so although he was unlucky to have drawn Jiren Wang in the first round, he still fought with all his strength. At the same time, he had also heard of Jiren Wang's supreme prestige. He also wanted to see how big the gap was between him and this legendary figure. But the result was obvious. There was still a huge gap between him and Jiren Wang. From the beginning to the end, he was completely suppressed. Even if he didn't count Jiren Wang's method of suppressing zombies, his real strength was still far from Yi Shiwen's. And after losing the first round, the possibility of participating in the finals was not big, and in his heart, Jiren Wang was invincible, Even if he advanced to the finals, he would still not be a match for Jiren Wang, so he already had the intention to retreat. Furthermore, the most important thing was that the life-stealing scholar in front of him had not been cultivating for a long time, but he was extremely terrifying. His lightning technique, in particular, completely suppressed his corpse path. Unless he could one day become a corpse emperor, it would be difficult for him to overcome this weakness of his element. He had already suffered a great loss by going all out. There was no point in continuing to fight, so he might as well not waste any more energy. However, his concession allowed Yi Shiwen to win easily. By the time Yi Shiwen reacted, he discovered that he was still the third one. The first one was Jiren Wang, and his opponent was Yi Wudi. In front of Jiren Wang, the invincible Yi Wudi was no match for him, and was almost defeated. Jiren Wang's clone was at the same level as Yi Wudi, but he was able to defeat Yi Wudi in a blink of an eye. Yi Wudi was also very tenacious, and he used many methods, but it was useless. In front of Jiren Wang, his strongest talisman, the Bell of Primal Chaos, was dissolved. Jiren Wang seemed to have something similar on him, so he was not afraid of the Bell of Primal Chaos. The final defeat reminded Yi Shiwen of the battle between Qin Lai and Ji Xian Huang. Qin Lai did not mention that battle in detail. He only said that he was no match for Ji Xian Huang, and was suppressed from start to finish. The most terrifying thing was that Ji Xian Huang had suppressed his realm to the same realm as Qin Lai, but Qin Lai was still no match for him. It was exactly the same as today's battle. Yi Wudi was unable to withstand a single blow from Jiren Wang, and he was continuously defeated. It seemed that he was very weak, or perhaps because Jiren Wang's realm was far higher than Yi Wudi's, the strength he could display in the same realm was far beyond Yi Wudi's imagination, and his magical power was above Yi Wudi's. At first glance, this seemed very reasonable, but Yi Shiwen himself knew that this was only suitable for ordinary people. Yi Wudi and Jiren Wang were not ordinary people. If it was someone else, even if they were also in the Sage realm, and they suppressed their realm to fight with Yi Wudi, according to Yi Wudi's strength, he would really beat the other party like a dog. It could only be said that Jiren Wang was not an ordinary existence. He began to get serious. This Jiren Wang's strength and threat were even above Ao Chaozong's. With such strength, it was very likely that he would become his final opponent. It was a pity that he was slower than Jiren Wang, and he could not see the actual situation at all. And Ao Chaozong was still one step faster than him. His opponent was his previous opponent, the young hierarch of the Heaven Evolution sect, Xue Xiaohua. After Xue Xiaohua lost to him, he was defeated by Ao Chaozong even faster. Moreover, because the injuries he had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen did not seem to have fully recovered, he was unable to withstand a single blow from Ao Chaozong, and he did not even have a decent counterattack. And after him was young Kuan Peng. This time, he finally won. His opponent was King Kong Mu, and he fought with all he had, and King Kong Mu was defeated by him. And the last battle was between Feng Zihao and Yuan Hong. This battle could be said to be a chaotic one. Both of them had extraordinary real bodies, but the final result was that Feng Zihao was still defeated by Yuan Hong. As someone from the previous generation, Yuan Hong's clone was not as strong as Jiren Wang's province, but it was still very terrifying, and it successfully defeated Feng Zihao. This time, the scene was completely clear. There were a total of 4 people who had won 2 battles, and they were Jiren Wang, Ao Chaozong, Yi Shiwen, and Yuan Hong. Of the remaining 6 people, Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng had each won 1 battle, and the others had lost 2 battles. On the high platform, Feng Nanshan's expression was extremely ugly. Feng Nantian was already the most outstanding person in his line, but when competing with outsiders, he had lost 2 battles. Especially since the ancient Phoenix realm was the host. This was simply a great humiliation. He gripped the armrest tightly. These years, the ancient Phoenix realm had been lukewarm, relying on the remnants of the past to pass their days. Apart from the heavy injuries they had suffered during the war of resistance against the heavens, one of the main reasons was that the younger generation was not as good as the previous one. Although Feng Ziheo's performance was not bad, he was not ranked among the strongest people of the current generation. This in itself was very fatal. He was originally one of the candidates that the ancient Phoenix realm had pushed out to cultivate to become a future emperor. Since ancient times, there had never been a case where a person who could be called an emperor was not one of the strongest people of the current generation. In a battle of the same realm, losing 2 battles was also a resounding slap to the ancient Phoenix realm. Although the opponents he had faced were very terrifying, the first one was the current master of the ancient heavenly court, the famous Yiwudi. The other one was from the clan of the 4 spiritual monkeys, which had been one of the most illustrious clans since ancient times. It seemed that his defeat was not too shameful. However, a defeat was a defeat. There was no other explanation for a defeat. In the next battle, let Feng Zihao fight against that Xue Xiaohua. Among these people, his strength is the weakest. Moreover, he has yet to recover from his serious injuries. He is the representative of our ancient Phoenix realm. We cannot not win a single battle, Feng Nantian said coldly. If Feng Zihao could not win a single battle, it would be a slap to his face on the spot. Fortunately, Yiwudi has already lost. Even if he wins the next battle, he will only win 2 battles. He will definitely not be able to enter the finals. I can finally get rid of that damned Yi Shiwen. Feng Nantian revealed a somewhat happy smile on his face as he thought of this. Although things did not go according to his best plan, at least it did not deteriorate into the worst situation. This time, Yi Shiwen did not come. Yi Wudi, who was the representative of Yi Shiwen, had already lost a battle. He no longer had the upper hand. He certainly would not have the opportunity to stand out unless all 4 of them were defeated. How could that be possible? These 4 people had won 2 battles. Among these 10 people, they were considered outstanding. They were the top of the top. Naturally, there was no need to worry. No, this is still possible. We cannot let Yi Wudi have a chance to turn the tables, Feng Nantian said coldly. In the next battle, let the first 4 people fight against each other. In this way, no matter who wins or loses, the remaining 2 people will have won all 3 battles. Even if Yi Wudi has monstrous skills, he will not have the chance to win another battle, Feng Nantian said coldly. He had already arranged everything. There were absolutely no loopholes. Yi Wudi would definitely not let him go and win again. However, there was still a kind of uneasiness in his heart. It was a strong uneasiness, as if he had missed something. This feeling made him very uneasy. At his level, it could be said that his cultivation had already reached a stage where ghosts and gods would weep. Normally, he could understand any problem with just a thought. However, at this moment, he had such an unsafe thought. There must be something that he had missed. However, no matter how he calculated, he could not calculate any loopholes in his plan. It was a completely perfect arrangement. Although Feng Ziheo's successive defeats made him very disappointed, the arrangement to deal with Yi Wudi was very appropriate. No matter what, the 3rd round begin. With his order, the curtain of the 3rd round finally began. There was not much time to rest, because there was no need to continue fighting for Feng Zihao. The 3rd round has finally begun. This time, among the top 4 of the 3rd round, there are actually 2 martial great masters. They are simply too powerful. There are only 2 martial great masters, and they actually made it into the semifinals. They are too strong. Stop talking. Look, the 3rd round has finally begun. Hiss, how could it be like this? It is completely a battle between the strong. Chapter 2472. Seeing the situation of the 3rd battle, everyone was stunned. The four people who had maintained a complete victory so far had actually started to fight against each other. Such a result was slightly shocking. Similarly, this meant that the other 6 people had no chance of advancing to the finals. The others were completely eliminated. The outcome would be decided by the 4 people in front of them. When Yi Shiwen saw this arrangement, he immediately understood why. It was to guard against Yi Wudi. In any case, Feng Zihao had already lost all hope of advancing to the finals. Therefore, the ancient Phoenix Realm's next goal was to completely ban Yi Wudi. After losing to Ji Renwang, even if Yi Wudi won the next round, he would only be on par with the rest of them. And if 2 of the 4 of them won, then they would directly advance to the finals. Good plan. Yi Shiwen clicked his tongue in wonder. In front of him, his opponent had already appeared. It was none other than Yuan Hong. This was a sky-piercing violent ape. He had already transformed into his original form. His hair had grown in the opposite direction. He looked at Yi Shiwen with eyes full of tyranny. His face revealed a somewhat sinister expression. "Brat, I've finally met you. Kill yourself, and I'll leave your corpse intact," Yuan Hong said tyrannically. But in front of him, Yi Shiwen seemed to be relieved. Yuan Hong's face immediately fell. How smart was he? He immediately figured out the reason for Yi Shiwen's expression. Was it because he was happy that his opponent was him? Damn it, he dared to look down on me. You dare to think that I'm a pushover? Ha 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 ha, I won't even leave your corpse intact. Yuan Hong gnashed his teeth in anger. His real body could move unhindered in the world. He wasn't afraid of titled kings. But now, he was being looked down upon by this guy. This was a great humiliation. It was even more humiliating than being defeated. Opposite him, Yi Shiwen's expression was calm. He wasn't moved by Yuan Hong's words. On the contrary, he just looked at him indifferently. I don't have much time. I must finish you before they do. So, I won't be polite this time. Yi Shiwen's eyes were as cold as the beginning of the universe. His voice was indifferent, but it contained a kind of strong self-confidence. To him, it didn't matter if Ji Renwang or Ao Chaozong won first, they would both become his strongest opponents. Therefore, he only had one choice, and that was to give it his all to recover to his peak condition. That way, no matter what kind of opponent he faced, he would have absolute confidence to face them. Life-stealing scholar, ever since I, Yuan Hong, made my debut, no one has ever dared to look down on me like this. I've killed countless scums like you. You'll pay for what you've said today. Yuan Hong said with a menacing expression. So you must die. Yuan Hong took a step forward. Chaotic chi gushed out from the top of his head, forming a cloud. The cloud shone brightly. This was a technique that Yuan Hong had never used before. Is that all? Let's go all out. Yi Shiwen shouted. Yuan Hong raised his eyebrows. He could clearly see that Yi Shiwen's imposing aura was rising as soon as his voice fell. His previous words were not meaningless, but rather, it was a kind of martial arts method to enhance his own strength. Trying to disturb my state of mind? Yuan Hong said coldly. The cloud above his head gradually rotated, becoming more and more terrifying. An invincible pressure swept down fiercely. Yuan Hong was not affected by it. He had his own extreme confidence. As the descendant of the 4 chaotic monkeys, he was extremely talented and was not afraid of any opponent. The iron staff in his hand suddenly spun, forming a circle in his hand. In an instant it turned into a pillar that could support the sky. A vast amount of chi burst out from it, and it instantly crushed down on Yi Shiwen. It was not an attack, but a complete crushing down. The iron staff grew longer and larger, covering the sky. In an instant it blocked all the escape routes in the sky, preventing Yi Shiwen from escaping. Yi Shiwen did not move an inch. In the end, he finally made his move. His hands tore apart the sky full of lightning. He clenched his fists and met the attack head-on. Clang! A deafening roar rang out. The sky was shaking, and everything in the world was trembling. The entire arena rumbled and shook, as if two monsters were fighting each other. Everyone had seen the tyrannical physical strength of the two. This time, the collision shocked countless people. The violent collision caused the void to tremble for a long time. After Yuan Hong's attack failed, he immediately retracted his iron staff. A dazzling light burst out, washing out rays of dazzling black gold light. Then, his whole body soared into the sky. The man and the staff became one. This was an extremely brilliant martial arts technique. I will split the chaos in the world, Yuan Hong roared, activating all the spiritual power in his body. He was going all out. Yi Shiwen's disregard had thoroughly enraged him. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, otherwise, he would not be able to suppress the rage in his heart. Although this was not his real body, it was just an avatar. His strength was equally terrifying. The iron staff swept across the sky, and unexpectedly, clanging sounds could be heard as it once again smashed down. Again, I don't believe that your fist is harder than my staff, Yuan Hong roared. A mere eternal realm expert also wanted to challenge him. Today I must kill you. The spiritual power in Yuan Hong's body burst out. The iron staff in his hand actually tore the void apart. The cloud above his head became even more terrifying. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fists met again. The strength of both sides had increased by a lot. He wore a thunder armor, wrapping himself in it. It was as if he was a man of lightning. After this attack, everyone could only see that Yi Shiwen's eyes were exceptionally cold. Countless calculations were reflected in his eyes. In a second, countless changes, all kinds of details, were constantly evolving in his eyes. After wearing the thunder armor, Yi Shiwen's defensive ability had almost reached the peak, an abnormal level. So what if your iron staff is a divine tool? Today, I will destroy your divine tool with my bare hands, Yi Shiwen shouted. After this attack, he took the initiative to launch an attack, counterattacking Yuan Hong, who had used a divine tool. His fists brought about a thunderstorm, tearing through the void, and ruthlessly bombarded towards Yuan Hong. Yuan Hong was also somewhat surprised. One must know that even he felt his hands go numb from the previous attack. He was shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength, but this Yi Shiwen actually took the initiative to attack as if nothing had happened. What a joke! Yuan Hong was furious. The iron staff in his hand suddenly smashed down towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Another loud collision sound rang out. Behind Yi Shiwen, a true god condensed from thunder and lightning instantly appeared. As if an ancient emperor had come back to life, the terrifying power of thunder and lightning suddenly burst out. All the power of the lightning burst out in an instant, and the iron rod smashed directly on the phantom, forming a shocking ripple that shook out. Yi Shiwen failed to kill Yi Shiwen. Instead, he took a big step forward and instantly attacked in front of Yuan Hong. His fists formed two dragon heads, suddenly opened their big mouths and swallowed Yuan Hong. Bang! Yuan Hong was directly sent flying by Yi Shiwen's attack on the spot. Yi Shiwen did not show the slightest bit of politeness. Yuan Hong was at a disadvantage in this collision. It seemed that their skills were similar, but in fact, the strength of their bodies was incomparable. Perhaps Yuan Hong would not be at a disadvantage in the same realm, but now his avatar was only a small part of his blood essence and soul incarnation. It was far inferior to his real body. Yi Shiwen would not underestimate Yuan Hong's real body because of this. However, he did not care about Yuan Hong's avatar. Those geniuses of tens of thousands of years ago might be powerful, but if they thought that they could completely suppress Yuan Hong with just an avatar, then they would be underestimating their generation. They could only rely on their combat experience that far exceeded that of their generation. However, when Yi Shiwen abandoned everything else and only competed with his opponent in the simplest and most basic things, everything was different. A few cracks appeared on Yuan Hong's body. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Impossible. Even if it's just an avatar, I still have the ability to fight in the sky. How can I be inferior to you? Yuan Hong roared. He was still flying in the air, and was about to launch a counterattack. How can I let you succeed? Yi Shiwen took a step forward. His foot was like a pillar that supported the heavens. Bang! Yuan Hong was directly trampled by Yi Shiwen's foot and ruthlessly slammed into the ground. Even the indestructible ground cracked. One could imagine how terrifying this attack was. A big hole appeared on Yuan Hong's chest. His flesh was badly mangled, but it quickly recovered in a short time. This was the power of an Eternal Realm expert. It was extremely difficult to kill. Everyone outside the arena was completely scared silly when they saw this scene. How could Yuan Hong be beaten so miserably? He was simply unable to fight back in front of Yi Shiwen. Is that a martial arts avatar? Someone saw the huge shadow behind Yi Shiwen and confirmed that it was a thunder avatar. The power of thunder itself was one of the most terrifying forces in the world. Avatars condensed from the power of thunder had always been one of the most terrifying types of avatars. In front of everyone, the thunder avatar behind Yi Shiwen slowly merged into his body. Yi Shiwen's strength also grew at a terrifying rate. His aura also skyrocketed inch by inch. At this moment, Yi Shiwen no longer concealed himself. He brought out the thunder avatar and completely unleashed his strength. Bang! Yi Shiwen casually scattered the auspicious clouds that shrouded Yuan Hong's head. It was a very easy feat, and Yuan Hong's auspicious clouds were easily defeated. After merging with the thunder avatar, Yi Shiwen's strength increased by more than a little, while Yuan Hong's did not change at all. The gap between them rapidly widened. Chapter 2473. Yuan Hong's attack was easily taken care of by Yi Shiwen. Everyone outside the arena sighed. Sigh, Yuan Hong's real body is not here. Otherwise, he wouldn't be bullied to this extent. Someone sighed and felt sorry for Yuan Hong. Even if it was just a doppelganger, once it was defeated, it could be said that the prestige that he had accumulated over the years would be destroyed. Is his real body really going to come? Not to mention the fact that he has to prepare for the Kurfürst Road. Most importantly, if his real body really comes, it will be seen as the strong bullying the weak. Then, even if he wins, it will not be a good reputation. Someone curled his lips and said, Yes, although they are very strong in the same realm, it is no different from the Arabian Nights to defeat the heaven's pride of this generation with only a doppelganger. He is really thinking too much. That's true. Which of the peerless figures of this generation did not have many fortuitous encounters? It is just that their cultivation time is too short. Otherwise, they would be on par with them. This life-stealing scholar is one such example. With his cultivation of Thunder Dao, his future is limitless. Life-stealing scholar, don't even think of defeating me. Yuan Hong's body once again glowed with vitality. He leapt up from the ground, and his aura also gradually grew stronger, as if he was unsealing the power in his body. He was a clone, and his body contained a portion of the power that Yuan Hong had hidden away. When the need arose, he could unseal it. Of course, the consequences of doing so were very serious. He was just a doppelganger, so there was no way he could withstand such a terrifying power. Unless his real body was present, it would not take long for him to self-destruct. It could be said that it was a way to perish together. You want to defeat me with the power hidden in your doppelganger? Although Yi Shiwen was not afraid, he had to win quickly in order to seize the initiative. This time, there were advantages and disadvantages to this arrangement. The advantage was that as long as he won, he would definitely be able to enter the finals. There was no need to worry about the fact that he had used too much time earlier. However, the disadvantage was that he had to seize the initiative this time in order to recover more of his strength. Yi Shiwen did not wait for Yuan Hong to completely release his power. The Thunder Dragon halberd appeared in his hand and slashed towards Yuan Hong. Yuan Hong quickly raised his hand and blocked with the iron rod. Although the energy in his body was merging very quickly, it still needed time. As long as he completely released his power, it would be the time of Yi Shiwen's death. Bang! He spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying upside down. After fusing with the Thunderpath incarnation, Yi Shiwen's strength had increased by more than a little. In an instant, Yuan Hong was sent flying. Yuan Hong screamed again and again. Yi Shiwen's power of thunder was wreaking havoc inside his body, destroying his muscle tissues. This was a complete massacre. His offensive was simply vulnerable when facing Yi Shiwen. He was defeated on the spot. He was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. However, his offensive was easily blocked by Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen was truly like an ancient emperor. He had swept away all the strong enemies in his path. "I'll fight it out with you. Even if I die, you won't have it easy." Yuan Hong let out a loud roar and directly tore open his body. The energy that had yet to completely dissolve burst out in an instant, forming a beam of light and bombarding towards Yi Shiwen. Boom! This dreadful energy bombarded out at an incredible speed, piercing through the void. When it reappeared, it had already appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. Yuan Hong was also a veteran of many battles. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, he simply threw caution to the wind and launched a final attack. If he succeeded, he would be able to successfully kill Yi Shiwen. If he failed, it would not be any worse than before. He was also a resolute and ruthless person. Yi Shiwen only had time to set up a wall of thunder and lightning. At this time, there was no time to hide. This energy would sweep through the void, and he would not be able to hide in other spaces. He could only fight it head-on. Boom! The terrifying power spread, and Yi Shiwen's palm came into contact with this terrifying power. Boom! In an instant, this terrifying power blasted Yi Shiwen's palm into a bloody mess. This was the power of the Sage Realm, which was above the Imperishable Realm. Moreover, it was the power of the best of the Sage Realm. Even Yuan Hong's avatar, whose body was equivalent to the peak of the Imperishable Realm, was unable to maintain it for a long time. It was also unable to devour it. It was easy to imagine that this power had already surpassed the limits of the Imperishable Realm. Ha ha ha, immortal scholar, this was originally prepared for Ji Renwang. Now it's yours. Yuan Hong saw that in that instant Yi Shiwen was engulfed by the energy. Finally, he could not help but burst into laughter. Originally, he was extremely confident that there were not many opponents in the world who could rival him. Among the people who came this time, only Ji Renwang was worthy of his attention. Although he had not fought with Ji Renwang in the Kurfürst Road, he had heard that Ji Renwang was the champion. Every time the Kurfürst Road was opened, it was an opportunity. There was no telling how many powerful beings had entered it since ancient times. None of the juniors knew it as well as he did how difficult it was to take the lead and become one of the strongest people in the Kurfürst Road. He had participated in the Kurfürst Road twice. In the first one, he was just a passerby, a spectator, and his strength was not good at all. In the Kurfürst Road, where monsters ran rampant, he was nothing at all. In the second one, he was only considered to be an expert. This was the third time he was going to participate in the Kurfürst Road. This time, his goal was very simple, which was to become the strongest. Only by doing so, and becoming one of the strongest, would he be qualified to fight for that wisp of opportunity. The opportunity to become an emperor. Only by becoming an emperor could one become the strongest in the world. There was no one who would not be tempted. Because of this, he was very clear about how difficult it was to be the champion on the Kurfürst Road. But Ji Renwang had entered for the first time, and he was already the champion, becoming one of the strongest. If he was already a genius, then Ji Renwang was undoubtedly a monster. Yuan Hong had also heard of his legend. Even the heavens had given him the title of King of Men. This kind of monster had only been seen in ancient books. To think that there was such a person in the current generation, one could imagine how terrifying he was. He was also the person that he was most afraid of in this trip. They were both doppelgangers, and he also knew that he was not Ji Renwang's opponent. This move was originally left to deal with Ji Renwang, but he did not expect that he would have to leave it for a junior. Before he could even deal with Ji Renwang, it would have to end. He was really unwilling. But to be able to kill this little bastard, it was enough. Sigh, what a pity. This life-stealing scholar is so strong. If he does not die, he will definitely become an invincible expert in the future. But it's a pity that he is different from Yuan Hong. If Yuan Hong dies, he just loses a doppelganger, but if he dies, he will really die. But after losing such a genius, will the martial arts sect just let it go? What's the big deal? Do you think they can attack the ancient Phoenix realm? This itself is a matter of life and death. Swoosh! Suddenly, a long halberd pierced through the air amidst the chaotic explosions, directly blasting the defenseless Yuan Hong's head apart on the spot. Everyone was stunned. They thought that victory was already decided, but in the end, such an unforeseen event happened. Just what in the world happened? Everyone looked at the ball of energy that was still exploding. Even from afar, they could feel how terrifying that ball of energy was. Even a master of the eternal realm would be torn apart in an instant. The smoke dissipated and a bloody light burst out from within. Then, the energy disappeared in an instant, revealing Yi Shiwen's figure within. He was in a somewhat sorry state, and the skin on his palms was healing bit by bit. Forcefully taking on the energy just now had almost shattered his palms. This power had surpassed him by a whole realm. Fortunately, it was only energy. In the end, it was swallowed by Tianyuan Mirror and forcefully taken on. Otherwise, he might not have been able to take it off himself. He was still a little surprised. A master of the Sage Realm was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Moreover, it was the pinnacle of the Sage Realm. Were all the people on the path of choosing emperor monsters like this? Yuan Hong's primordial spirit was instantly destroyed by the Thunder Dragon halberd. His physical body shattered on the spot, turning into a ball of light and disappearing before everyone's eyes. However, this energy also gave him a chance to study the power of the Sage Realm. But at the moment, he really couldn't care less about that, because he had just taken care of Yuan Hong and was already teleported out. He was shocked. He had clearly used his full strength to take care of Yuan Hong and fight for time, but he was still too late. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in another arena. On the other side of the arena, a calm man stood in the sky, like a mountain, giving off an unapproachable aura. Who else could it be but Ao Chaozong? But at the moment, Ao Chaozong's situation was not that good, and he was in a rather sorry state. His clothes were ragged and his hair was disheveled. He looked like he had just been beaten up. It was then that Yi Shiwen learned that Ao Chaozong did not have an easy time in his battle with Ji Renwang. It should be said that Ao Chaozong was suppressed from beginning to end, and Ji Renwang seemed to be venting his anger, beating Ao Chaozong up straight away, then saying that he had admitted defeat, completely shattering his clone. And just like that, Ao Chaozong won inexplicably. There was no need to mention the sullen expression on his face. Although he had won, no one thought that he had really won. Even he himself didn't think this way. His face was ashen. Losing to a powerful ancient genius wasn't that big of a deal. His cultivation time was still short, so this wasn't much. However, he couldn't even defeat a clone. For someone like him who always had great ambitions, this was a complete humiliation, a stain that would remain for the rest of his life. Chapter 2474. A clone of a powerful ancient prodigy was the best touchstone for him. Dominating among his peers was nothing to him. He wanted to dominate all geniuses since ancient times and defeat all of them. His current strength was not enough to contend against these monstrous geniuses, but a clone was an opportunity. He was born on Dragon Island, and his innate magical powers were terrifying. He even had the supreme inheritance of the ancestral dragon. He was not afraid of anyone in this world, but he was beaten up by Ji Ren-wang. Even if the opponent was from the Ji clan, even if the opponent was from the martial sect, he was still unable to accept such an outcome. It is true that the martial sect is incomparably illustrious, but the Dragon Island is also a powerful inheritance that was revered by the people of the world. In terms of background, he does not lose to anyone. In terms of learning, he also thinks that he is the strongest existence in the world. In the end, he was beaten like a dog in a battle with Ji Ren-wang's clone. Moreover, Ji Ren-wang's surrender was a joke to him. After teaching him a lesson, Ji Ren-wang admitted defeat. It was obvious that he was watching a joke. He also knew that at this moment, everyone would probably think of him as a joke. Especially when Yi Shiwen appeared. He knew that the battle between Yi Shiwen and Yuan Hong had ended with Yi Shiwen's victory. It didn't seem to be a very miserable victory. Both of them had fought against the ancient geniuses, but the result was so different. This made him even more furious. Yi Shiwen looked at Ao Chaozong and did not attack immediately. He knew that Ao Chaozong was not in peak condition, but he was not in peak condition either. Instead of attacking rashly, it was better to recover and think about it later. Thinking of this, he simply sat on the ground and began to meditate. Although the Tianyuan mirror absorbed most of the power from that attack, it still injured him. On the other side, Ao Chaozong breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Yi Shiwen did not rush over immediately. He was in a very difficult situation. Although it was not to the point where he could not fight, it was not the most suitable situation. On the cloud platform, the big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm looked at each other. The situation on both sides was completely different from what they expected. Whether it was Yi Shiwen, Yuan Hong, or Ao Chaozong and Ji Ren-wang, they were all the same. Ao Chaozong and Ji Ren-wang's battle had no suspense from the start. Ao Chaozong was completely suppressed by Ji Ren-wang. In fact, in these three battles, Ji Ren-wang's battles had always been one-sided. But the real surprise was when Ji Ren-wang admitted defeat right after he defeated Ao Chaozong. This was practically an announcement to the public that he just wanted to teach Ao Chaozong a lesson. This was even more humiliating than a direct defeat. I didn't think that Ji Ren-wang would use this kind of method to slap the dragon race in the face. A big shot couldn't help but sigh. There's nothing strange about this. That was the first time he entered the Kurfürst Road, but he was already a peerless prodigy. It should be the Ji family's loss. They are both surnamed Ji, but he is not a member of the Ji family. He can only watch as the bloodline rises in the martial great sect. This might be a way to preserve the family. Who knows? But I'm afraid that Ji Ren-wang came here for Ao Chaozong. I still vaguely remember that incident. It seemed that Ao Chaozong was once again disrespectful to the martial great sect. But who would have thought that he was only here for this? What kind of insult is this? How can it be that simple? Ji Ren-wang did not go in person, but only sent a doppelganger, and it was even controlled at the peak of the Eternal Realm. Why? I'm afraid it's to announce to the world that I'm not bullying the weak. I can beat you up when we are in the same realm. How domineering! Some big shots lamented. Not everyone could be tough in front of Ji Ren-wang. Ji Ren-wang's strength was unfathomable. He dominated the Kurfürst Road for the first time. Now that 100,000 years had passed, it was impossible to estimate how strong he had become. No matter what, I'm afraid that Ao Chaozong has lost all his face this time. Is there still a need for a marriage alliance with such a person? Some big shots asked. This time, Ao Chaozong had lost all his face. If the ancient Phoenix realm wanted to form a marriage alliance with them, it was inevitable that they would be implicated. That's nothing. Don't forget that we are the ancient Phoenix realm. Behind Ao Chaozong is the Dragon Clan. Who dares to gossip in front of our two clans? As for the temporary failure, it's nothing. Feng Nantian said indifferently. Ao Chaozong was not what he valued the most. What he valued was the power of the Dragon Clan. If they could unite with the Phoenix Clan at this time, they would be able to get through the most difficult time in this period. He looked at Yi Shiwen. If the matter of Ao Chaozong and Ji Renwang was said to be a little shocking, then Yi Shiwen defeating Yuan Hong was something that he had never expected. Those ancient geniuses were very strong. Ao Chaozong was already the strongest genius of the current generation, but in the end, he was beaten half to death. Although Yuan Hong might not be as strong as Ji Renwang, he was beaten half to death by Yi Shiwen without any strength to fight back. If he hadn't used a big move at the end to injure Yi Shiwen, the scene would have been too ugly to look at. One could imagine the shock that Yi Shiwen had given everyone. What secret is this deadly scholar hiding? Feng Nantian said while tapping his finger on the armrest. The others were still fighting. But the result of the battle did not matter to him anymore. The finals had already begun, so there was no point in fighting anymore. I never expected that the last two battles would be completely reversed. The spectators were speechless when they saw this scene. Fortunately, no one had opened the bet. Otherwise, they would have lost everything. Ji Renwang seems to be here for fun. He doesn't seem to care about the battle here at all. I know. This Ji Renwang must have come because of Ao Chaozong's arrogant words. I heard that Ao Chaozong didn't put the martial sect in his eyes at all. Now, the retribution has come. It's not that there are no capable people in the martial sect, it's just that no one has taken action. Now, the hatred between the two sides is even greater. Although Ao Chaozong is no match for Ji Renwang, it's not that there are no experts in the Dragon Island. There are also peerless experts from the Dragon Island who have participated in the Kurfürst Road. I'm afraid there won't be any peace when the time comes. Everyone was talking about it. Whether it was the martial sect or the Dragon Island, they were both giants that were beyond their reach. No matter what, the battle between the peerless heroes of these two giants would attract a lot of attention no matter what. Everyone's eyes fell on Yi Shiwen and Ao Chaozong. One of them had defeated an ancient genius in a domineering manner, and the other one had been humiliated by Ji Renwang. So, he had been suppressing his anger, and wanted to take revenge. The battle between these two people would be more exciting than any of the previous battles. Suddenly, both sides jumped up at the same time. They jumped up violently at almost the same time. Both sides didn't move recklessly. Instead, they stood in a stalemate. Deadly Scholar, I want you to go back and tell Ji Renwang that I'll make him pay for the humiliation I've suffered today with interest. Ao Chaozong's complexion turned ashen as he said. He was so angry that his liver and guts were trembling. He flew into a rage. This was a humiliation that he would never be able to wash away in his lifetime. Even if his opponent was a peerless genius of the so-called Imperial Clan, Ji family. Tell him that he'd better not lose to anyone else before he loses to me. I'll take his head with my own hands. Ao Chaozong's will was not as strong as iron. He quickly suppressed this feeling of humiliation and said coldly, "Go and tell him yourself if you have the guts to do so," Yi Shiwen said indifferently. He knew that Ao Chaozong had regarded him as a member of the martial sect. After all, he had also come on behalf of the martial sect. Things have already reached this point. If I were you, I would have tactfully retreated. You've already been beaten up by Ji Renwang. You've lost all your face. Do you want to repeat the same thing again? Yi Shiwen put his hands behind his back. He looked calm and relaxed. However, every cell in his body was in a tense state. He was ready to attack at any time. Ao Chaozong's complexion turned even darker. However, he didn't get provoked by Yi Shiwen. He just took a step forward. Bang! The void collapsed on the spot. Cracks formed in the void. Then, they spread out in all directions like a spider web. A terrifying power rushed out from the cracks like a landslide or a tsunami. It was extremely terrifying. The terrifying power was like a tsunami. It crushed down towards Yi Shiwen with an earth-shattering momentum. You want to provoke me? You're too naive. Since you're not willing to pass on the message, then I'll kill you first. Then, I'll go and kill him later. I'll make him regret it for the rest of his life. Ao Chaozong said coldly. A heavenly halberd appeared in his hand at this moment. The surging power coming from his body was terrifying even from afar. Yi Shiwen's sleeves were fluttering in the violent power. Yi Shiwen's expression was exceptionally cold. He had fought against Ao Chaozong before. However, it was only a clone. The power that his clone possessed wasn't even 1,000th of his main body. They weren't on the same level. It would be a huge mistake if one were to use the battle situation of his clone to predict his main body's strength. It would be completely immeasurable. There were many techniques that his clone couldn't display. However, his main body could. Ao Chaozong's power rose to the peak in this violent aura. The heavenly halberd in his hand turned from rotten to magical. It hacked down towards Yi Shiwen. The world seemed to have transformed into a pitch-black crack. The crack spread down towards Yi Shiwen from the sky. Chapter 2475. Ao Chaozong wanted to wash away his humiliation. He might not be able to defeat Jiren Wang right now, but in his eyes, Yi Shiwen and Jiren Wang were of the same sect. Killing Yi Shiwen first would be considered as collecting some interest. The terrifying dragon chi splashed out. It was like a group of twinkling stars in the night sky. The sky was filled with halberd lights. They were shattering the vast sky, and were ferociously bombarding towards Yi Shiwen. This halberd attack displayed a terrifying power. Yi Shiwen was not to be outdone, and the Thunder Dragon halberd met the attack head-on. The Thunder Dragon halberd turned into a Thunder Dragon, breaking through the sky with the power to create chaos. Boom! With a loud rumble, the two halberds finally collided. Ao Chaozong and Yi Shiwen both took a few steps back and separated. This attack was evenly matched, and neither of them had the upper hand. You want to mess with Jiren Wang with this kind of strength? I think you're really looking for death. Yi Shiwen retorted coldly. What a glib tongue! Ao Chaozong, who was in battle mode, was as cold as water. He was no longer affected by these words. The halberd in his hand swept across the sky without the slightest ripple, and fell straight down. If an ordinary person were to see this, they would think that it was an attack from a Hotian-level warrior. However, Yi Shiwen knew that this attack was no trifling matter. The Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand instantly shot out a halberd light to meet the incoming attack. The power of thunder splashed out of his body to block Ao Chaozong's attack. Boom! 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 Both sides had exchanged 1,000 blows, 10,000 blows, and each blow was more intense than the last. The power of both sides was slowly climbing to the peak. It seemed that Ao Chaozong was the one who took the initiative to attack, but Yi Shiwen was able to defend himself. No matter how terrifying Ao Chaozong's attacks were, he was able to block them all without missing a single one. If Ao Chaozong's attacks were like an endless tide, then Yi Shiwen would be like a boulder. He wouldn't waver in the slightest no matter how many attacks he threw at him. The attacks from both sides were very intense. However, one could tell just by looking at the two of them. Both of them had very serious expressions on their faces, but it didn't seem like they had entered a decisive battle. Especially Yi Shiwen. He was able to calculate a portion of Ao Chaozong's strength every time he blocked an attack. He hadn't witnessed the previous battle with his own eyes, so he could only make a new calculation now. Many big shots of the ancient Phoenix world on the high platform were watching with rapt attention. They had thought that Ao Chaozong would have been able to gain the upper hand. After all, Ao Chaozong was one of the top experts of this world regardless of his race or his knowledge. He had lost to Ji Rinwang because Ao Chaozong was too strong. So, he couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen now. This was completely beyond their expectations. Their minds began to churn as they tried their best to figure out which lineage within the martial sect was able to groom such a formidable prodigy who was able to compete with Ao Chaozong. More importantly, he was only at the imperishable realm middle stage. Thinking about it, the fatal stealing scholar seemed to be much more terrifying than Ao Chaozong. This fatal stealing scholar is really unfathomable. He'll definitely become a great person in the future, a big shot of the ancient Phoenix world said. Originally, they could still leisurely watch the battles between the younger generation. However, when they looked at Ao Chaozong and the fatal stealing scholar now, they realized that both of them were well-known figures of this generation. Regardless of whether it was their attacks, the timing of their moves, or their understanding of martial arts, they had all reached the peak of perfection. Many people were even ashamed to realize that if they were in the same realm, they might not be a match for these two people. These two are peerless heroes. Either one of them will have no problem matching up with the Phoenix Maiden. One of them is the Dragon Island, and the other is the martial sect. Both of them had emperor legacies. They're not inferior to our ancient Phoenix world at all. A big shot nodded. In fact, it wasn't just not inferior. In the past, it was hard to say. But now that the ancient Phoenix world had been heavily damaged, it was definitely far inferior to these two legacies. Look, Ao Chaozong has made his move. He's going all out. Everyone turned to look and saw that at this moment, Ao Chaozong and Yi Shiwen had separated from each other. Are you trying to test me? Ao Chaozong's lips curled into a cold smile. But I was also testing you just now. I've already seen through your intentions. He stopped moving and didn't launch an attack. Instead, he just smiled coldly. Even if you have such intentions, it's useless. My strength is unfathomable. It's not something you can see through with such a simple method. As Ao Chaozong spoke, waves of aura gushed out from his body. In an instant, the dragon aura gushed out from his body and turned into many gods. Moreover, they were gods of the dragon tribe. One by one, they formed a huge kingdom of the dragon tribe. And in the center of the entire dragon tribe kingdom, a huge 9-clawed divine dragon was sitting. It was giving a sermon. Golden lotuses fell from the sky, and each golden lotus contained the essence of the great Tao. Could this be the supreme skill of the dragon tribe, the ancestral dragon's sermon? Feng Nantian jumped to his feet and widened his eyes. That's right, it's definitely the ancestral dragon's sermon. It's said that the younger generations of the dragon tribe used their great powers to develop the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram. The diagram is even in the deepest part of the Dragon Island. Later on, I heard that someone used it to develop a supreme skill. But I've never seen it with my own eyes. This is just too shocking. Some of the big shots from the ancient Phoenix realm said with a trembling voice. They seemed to be completely shocked by the diagram. Everyone in the universe knew what kind of person the ancestral dragon was. He was one of the strongest in the universe. Back in the day, he and the Phoenix ancestor of the ancient Phoenix realm were both figures who dominated the universe. Even the gods of the dragon tribe came from all over to listen to the sermon of an emperor-level figure. It formed a shocking diagram of the ancestral dragon's sermon. Among the gods who came to listen to the sermon, the weakest were powerful existences of the sage realm. It was just that it could no longer be restored to its former glory. But just the thought of the grand occasion of the sermon was enough to make people yearn for it. Unfortunately, the most important ancestral dragon within this ancestral dragon Tao lecture diagram is still blurry and cannot be seen clearly. Otherwise, this ancestral dragon Tao lecture diagram would be terrifying. Feng Nanshan's eyes were shining as he stared at it for a while before he involuntarily spoke in a regretful manner. And most importantly, he didn't use his own strength to develop it. I'm afraid he obtained a copy of the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram. Although it's not bad to use the copy to demonstrate it, it's still a bit inferior. Ever since the Golden Dragon King evolved the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram, there's only one other than the Golden Dragon King who could cultivate this martial art to the highest realm. It's already shocking enough that Ao Chaozong could reach this level. Someone couldn't help but say. Although it wasn't the most complete, it was still very shocking. Maybe one day it will be fully developed. There was no way to fully develop the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram now, but it was hard to say in the future. After all, this was a martial art, a supreme martial art. In this diagram of the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram, Ao Chaozong stood in the sky like a demon god, exuding an extremely terrifying aura. At this moment, he was the ruler of the world, as if he had suddenly become the ruler of the entire world, becoming the ancestral dragon that dominated the world countless years ago. Every technique was no longer a secret in front of him. He could see through everything with his discerning eyes. This was an unparalleled pressure that came crashing down. This technique simulated the grand occasion of the ancestral dragon's sermon in the past, suppressing everything in all directions, and no one could stand in its way. In the Dragon Clan, this technique had a supreme reputation. This was because this technique faintly borrowed the ancestral dragon's luck. Although the ancestral dragon had already fallen, his might still existed in the world. It was just that it was very difficult for people to borrow even a little bit of it, and this technique could borrow the fortune of the ancestral dragon to suppress all enemies. Yi Shiwen also faintly felt a kind of pressure coming from the void, as if a terrifying big shot was staring at him, causing him to feel an endless pressure. The ancestral dragon's sermon diagram. Yi Shiwen spat out these words coldly. In order to deal with Ao Chaozong, he had looked up a lot of information, and among them was the ancestral dragon's sermon diagram. Although the Golden Dragon King hadn't attained the Tao in the past, he relied on this technique to kill several kings of the Celestial Clan, and made a name for himself in the first war against the heavens. From then on, the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture picture was known to the world. It was just that this divine ability was extremely difficult to cultivate. There weren't many that could be deduced with one's own strength. Most of them relied on the picture scroll and copied the rubbing to display it. But even so, this technique was still very shocking. That's right, I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable, Ao Chaozong said coldly, and the picture scroll slowly rose under his control and instantly suppressed Yi Shiwen. It was even more terrifying than the suppression of a world, as if there was an even more terrifying power added to it. It made him feel as if his vision turned black, and he was about to faint. This was not even suppressed, and just the aura alone was already so terrifying. If it was completely suppressed, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Although he didn't have the enlightening mind ancient tree with him, he could still feel this terrifying pressure even with his willpower. One could imagine how terrifying this technique was. You want to defeat me with just the aura? You're too naive. Yi Shiwen shouted, and all the power in his body exploded and rushed to the sky. Then I'll suppress you to death, Ao Chaozong shouted. Chapter 2476. That life-stealing scholar actually managed to block the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture. According to the legends, the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture contains the imprint of the great way of the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture. Apart from the emperor, who in this world can resist the imprint of the great way of the emperor? Therefore, this move is almost invincible. However, this life-stealing scholar was not affected by the imprint of the great way of the ancestral dragon. Could it be that he wants to break away from the influence of his ancestors and carve out his own path of invincibility? Someone exclaimed. Under the influence of the Emperor's imprint, almost no one would be unaffected. Needless to say, everyone could understand how terrifying the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture was. However, Yi Shiwen actually managed to block it. This was completely beyond everyone's expectations. That kind of imprint of the Emperor's level. Even though we are far away, we can still feel it. That life-stealing scholar is enduring a terrifying pressure. Youngsters nowadays are getting more and more terrifying. Even us old fellows are sweating in shame. A powerful existence of the ancient Phoenix realm couldn't help but sigh. Ao Chaozong didn't even use this move just now. It's too terrifying. He didn't even have the time to use it just now. He was suppressed by Ji Renwang from the beginning to the end. He didn't even have a decent chance to counterattack. Feng Nantian said indifferently. In fact, he was more optimistic about Ji Renwang. Although Ao Chaozong was also not bad, Ji Renwang was the most suitable candidate to suppress Ao Chaozong. As long as he was willing to release the seal on his body, it was only a matter of time before he broke into the realm of the titled king. In fact, he could become a top-notch king in a short time. Otherwise, how could he bear the heavy responsibility of the marriage alliance? Moreover, this life-stealing scholar was also a peerless genius. He was indeed extraordinary to be able to withstand such an attack. However, the better the life-stealing scholar performed, the more uneasy Feng Nantian felt. He didn't know why. At this time, Ao Chaozong had already launched his attack. The ancestral dragon's Tao lecture was slowly suppressing the surroundings. However, the truly terrifying thing was that this wasn't the end of the attack. In the sky, the gods of the dragon race that were originally in the picture scroll came back to life. It was as if they had become gods. They raised their heads to the sky and roared. In an instant, the world was filled with the roars of dragons. One by one, the terrifying gods of the dragon race pounced down. While these were not their true forms were once the gods of the dragon clan. They were terrifying existences above the sage plane at the very least. Their wills had persisted and were reformed in the world. It could be said that they were not real gods, but it could also be said that they were not real gods. In short, they were very terrifying. Whoosh! A long black dragon pounced directly in front of him. It opened its bloody mouth, and an inexhaustible cold air condensed in it. It seemed as if it would transform into a mass of ice and swallow him whole. Poochie! The thunder dragon halberd directly pierced through the black dragon, turning it into a blood mist in the air. Fresh blood spurted out. Yi Shiwen's expression was ice-cold, and there was not the slightest trace of emotion on his face. It was as if he had just casually stepped on an ant. He could feel the power of this black dragon, but its true strength was not that terrifying. It was just a drop of blood essence. It was not the true form, so the difference was huge. However, this was only one of them. More and more ferocious dragons rushed over. One after another, the dragon gods rose from the ground and rushed out of the ancestral dragon's Tao diagram. They roared and rushed over to kill Yi Shiwen. Poochie! 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 Every time the sound of iron breaking flesh was heard, a dragon god was beheaded by Yi Shiwen. Just looking at this scene, it seemed as if it was the end of the world. A person could actually kill the dragon gods one by one. It was a completely incredible scene. However, it would be extremely difficult for Yi Shiwen to kill these dragon gods, even if that was the case. Because after being killed by Yi Shiwen, these dragon gods immediately condensed again and pounced over. There was no end to them. There was no end to them. But in the sky, the ancestral dragon Tao diagram was turning into a world, and it was crushing down bit by bit. These dragon gods were repeating the cycle, and it was impossible to kill them all. Yi Shiwen finally stopped killing. Thunder dragons automatically formed around his body, and pounced towards those dragon gods. He fought with those dragon gods in the sky. The scene looked incomparably shocking. Countless giant dragons were killing each other. This was a spectacular scene that could not be seen at any time. And at this moment Yi Shiwen put his hands together, and it seemed like he was forming some kind of seal. Everyone was watching. One should know that the ancestral dragon Dao diagram that Ao Chaozong brought out was too terrifying. It was just suppressing bit by bit, and it could crush everyone and sweep away all his opponents. Just what kind of trump card was Yi Shiwen preparing to deal with the ancestral dragon Dao diagram? Everyone was very curious. One should know that this was not something that could be dealt with by any ordinary move. Behind him, countless thunder and lightning were condensing, and they quickly formed the shape of a terrifying cannon. It was pointed at the ancestral dragon Dao diagram that was directly suppressing down. Ao Chaozong, watch carefully. This is the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon that I've specially refined for you. Yi Shiwen let out a sinister roar. This cannon had instantly drained all the magic power in his body, and it was then condensed into the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon, turning into an extremely terrifying energy that could pierce through the sky. Rumble! A terrifying sound of thunder rang out, and the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon shot out, crashing into the ancestral dragon Dao diagram. The ancestral dragon Dao diagram reacted immediately, and it instantly formed countless evil dragons to directly resist the cannon. Everyone only saw that in an instant there seemed to be no other color between the heavens and the earth. All the light between the heavens and the earth had been snatched away, and only endless energy could be seen colliding. Many gods' expressions changed as they looked at this scene. What kind of magic is this? How can it be so terrifying? It can actually resist the ancestral dragon Dao diagram. Hiss, I've seen many Thunder Dao magic, but I've never seen such a terrifying one. Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon, what a domineering name, but it has the domineering strength to match its name. Under this cannon, even the sky will be pierced through. How terrifying! If everyone was shocked by the ancestral dragon Dao diagram before, then now, everyone was shocked by the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon. On the ancestral dragon Dao diagram, Ao Chaozong's face revealed an incredulous expression. This was his ultimate skill, and he originally wanted to use it against Ji Renwang. Who would have thought that the gap between them would be so huge? He didn't even have the chance to use it from the beginning to the end, and he was defeated by Ji Renwang. Now, it should have been more than enough to suppress Yi Shiwen. He didn't believe that there was any magic that could be compared to the ancestral dragon Dao diagram. But whether or not he believed it, it still happened now. The Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon directly pierced through the entire ancestral dragon Dao diagram, and the countless dragon gods drawn on it collapsed one by one in front of everyone. In the face of this terrifying power, they completely collapsed. It directly rushed towards the ancestral dragon in the middle of the diagram. The ancestral dragon in the diagram suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the incoming Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon with ice-cold eyes. He opened his mouth and roared out countless dragon flames to confront the incoming Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon. Rumble! More than 10 seconds passed, and the collision still continued. It was only a few seconds and it seemed very short, but in the eyes of everyone it was as long as a century. Hee, do you think this is all? Ao Chaozong, take a good look. This is the second stage attack that I've developed based on the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon. It's not a complete success, but it's enough to give you a big surprise. Yi Shiwen was constantly panting. He was constantly operating the observing person scripture and phoenix regeneration technique to recover. He didn't dare to use them blatantly because he had to hide his identity. His strength was also recovering at an astonishing speed, and his magic power was constantly growing. This time, his magic power had been exhausted, and it made him feel as if his magic power had reached a new level. This was an extreme experience. Just when everyone thought that such a confrontation would continue like this, the thunder shock wave that was originally spat out suddenly burst out in an astonishing manner. Boom! The power of the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon instantly rose to a new level. All the power condensed together and rushed out. Bang! Ancestral Gragon, who was initially in a stalemate with the lightning bolt, was instantly defeated. His massive body was split into two at the waist. Next, an even more massive lightning bolt continued to charge over and obliterated his entire body, turning him into a pile of scrap. And this Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram was the core of the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram. Now that it was blasted by the cannon, the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram naturally couldn't continue to be maintained, and all the strange phenomena collapsed on the spot. All that could be seen was a diagram floating in the sky, and the content of the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram was drawn on it. Damn it! Ao Chaozong was about to snatch the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram back. After all, it was only a rubbing version, and not the original, but it wasn't easy to make a rubbing of a diagram that contained supreme magical power. The materials needed to be selected from the best. Don't look down on it just because it was a piece of paper, but in fact it was more valuable than an ordinary divine tool. In addition, the contents of the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon weren't many in the clan, and it was almost comparable to a top-grade divine tool. However, the remaining energy of the Thunder Emperor's sky-piercing cannon continued to blast towards him. He had no choice but to wave the iron halberd in his hand, and split the thunder energy apart. Fortunately, after the obstruction of the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram, there wasn't much left of the remaining energy. Although it took some effort, it was successfully dispersed. However, when he wanted to retrieve the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram, he saw a scene that made his eyes pop out. A huge hand broke through the sky and directly grabbed the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram. Chapter 2477. Suddenly, a giant hand broke through the sky and snatched the Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse painting. The entire arena was sealed off by an array formation to prevent others from interfering. Even a king-ranked martial artist would not be able to break through it in a short period of time. However, this huge hand had managed to do it. There was no need to even think about it. It could only be Yi Shiwen. "How dare you!" Ao Chaozong roared and took a step forward. His entire body rushed out, but he was still a step too slow. He could only watch as Yi Shiwen kept the Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse painting in his pocket. His heart was bleeding. Although its power could not be compared to a supreme-grade divine weapon, its value was comparable. This trick was broken by Yi Shiwen, and even the Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse diagram was taken away. It could be said that he had suffered a double loss. "I'm going to kill you!" Ao Chaozong roared at Yi Shiwen. His eyes were filled with boundless murderous intent. This time, he was completely enraged by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had just kept the Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse painting in his pocket. He had not looked at it yet. Even if it was unbearable, he knew that it was a valuable treasure. The key was whether he could decipher the martial arts in this painting. This move forced Yi Shiwen to use the Thunder Emperor Heavenly Cannon to defeat it. One could imagine how powerful it was. Of course, Yi Shiwen was more interested in the mark of the Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse. If he could comprehend it for a long time, it would greatly benefit his cultivation. Although it could not compare to the original Ancestral Dragon's Dao Discourse painting, it was enough. It was an unexpected gain. However, these benefits were for the future. Right now, he had to defeat Ao Chaozong first. Ancestral Dragon Seal. Ao Chaozong flipped his hand and formed a seal, slamming it down on Yi Shiwen. The Ancestral Dragon Seal transformed into a ferocious dragon that swooped down from the sky. The entire sky was covered by this huge dragon, entrenched in the ground. It was not Yi Shiwen's first time seeing the Ancestral Dragon Seal. He had seen it once when he fought against Ao Chaozong. But back then, it was just Ao Chaozong's clone. The ancestral dragon seal that he was able to use back then paled in comparison to the one he was using now. When Ao Chaozong's power came down, it could be said to be able to flip the heavens and earth upside down. Its might was boundless. Yi Shiwen, on the other hand, remained motionless. Golden light shone brilliantly on his body. This was the first time that he had manifested other cultivation besides the cultivation of the Thunder Tao. He was like a golden Buddha walking in this world. Everywhere he went, he would enlighten the creatures of the land. He had supreme merits. This scene had thoroughly shocked the others. That was because this was the first time that Yi Shiwen had revealed any other cultivation besides the Thunder Tao magical power. Everyone was guessing if it was because he only cultivated Lightning Tao divine abilities, which was why he was able to cultivate Lightning Tao divine abilities to such an extent. This was the only way to explain everything. But now it didn't seem like that was the case. He was still hiding his strength. He was definitely hiding his strength. It was not as simple as just the cultivation of the Thunder Tao. Yi Shiwen's magic power had yet to recover, which forced him to reveal some other cultivation. At this stage, even if his identity might be exposed, he couldn't care less. Yi Shiwen took a step forward. Then, the Thunder Battle armor appeared outside his golden body, and wrapped him inside it. He slapped his palm and clashed with the ancestral dragon seal. The terrifying divine power shattered most of the space in an instant. Everything was dyed golden. At the same time, the power of the Thunder Tao turned into a shocking attack and clashed with the ancestral dragon seal. Boom! There was a huge explosion. Yi Shiwen was forced to retreat. This was the first time he was at a disadvantage since he fought against Ao Chaozong. It was different from before when one was on the offensive and the other was on the defensive. At this moment, he really felt like he couldn't win. It's a pity. That deadly scholar's Thunder Emperor heaven-piercing cannon might be powerful, but it's obvious that it consumes a lot of energy. It's not as good as Ao Chaozong's. Although the ancestral dragon's Tao lecture diagram also consumes a lot of energy, he has a copy of it. That's enough to reduce the consumption by half. Usually, it's not enough to see anything, but at the crucial moment it's enough to see the gap. I'm afraid this gap will only get bigger and bigger, Feng Nantian said with a sigh. Feng Nantian knew what his cultivation level was. He could see it clearly with just a glance. At this moment, everyone could also see that Yi Shiwen had consumed too much energy. That move just now might be shocking, but it should have consumed most of his energy. Yi Shiwen was gasping for breath. It was just as everyone had guessed. His martial power had yet to recover. If it wasn't for the fact that he had the tyrant body as a foundation, he would have been killed by Ao Chaozong's ancestral dragon seal. Die! Ao Chaozong chased relentlessly and slammed down with another ancestral dragon seal. Yi Shiwen kept retreating and defending. It didn't take long before he was forced into a dead end. Humph, so what if you've taken my ancestral dragon's Tao lecture diagram? Once you die, everything will fall into my hands. Ao Chaozong said coldly. However, he suddenly realized that Yi Shiwen's aura had suddenly changed. It had suddenly risen by several levels. No, you were deliberately luring me to relax my attacks. Ao Chaozong immediately realized that he had fallen into Yi Shiwen's trap just now. Yi Shiwen had pretended to be exhausted to make Ao Chaozong believe that he would only need to consume a little bit of magic power to kill his opponent. But in reality, he was taking advantage of this period of time to recover. What was even more terrifying was that he had recovered to this extent in such a short time. Everyone finally reacted after being reminded by Ao Chaozong. What kind of trick did Yi Shiwen use? Let alone Ao Chaozong, even they were also deceived. Because they had never truly understood Yi Shiwen's bottom line. That was why they were deceived. The situation is about to turn. Someone exclaimed. That's right. You've guessed correctly. Unfortunately, it's too late. The power of thunder on Yi Shiwen's body instantly turned into a sea of thunder. Terrifying power erupted in an instant. He immediately launched a counterattack. Although he had not recovered to his peak, he was not far from it. It did not affect his combat effectiveness. Your legend should end here. It's time to end. He took a step forward and swept the Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand to fight with Ao Chaozong. You've actually recovered to your peak. It was my mistake that gave you this opportunity. Unfortunately, it's useless. Unfortunately, I've also recovered to my peak when you've recovered, Ao Chaozong said in a tit-for-tat manner. He kept waving the halberd in his hand and clashing with Yi Shiwen. Terrifying dragon energy surged out of his body. He had also recovered to his peak. He was not at a disadvantage at all. He had also raised his cultivation level to the peak, and every strike could kill a powerful expert at the peak of the undead realm. At this level, he had truly cultivated to the peak of perfection. Unless he encountered a freak like Jiren Wang, he would be invincible. He was close to the Sage Realm. He was only half a step away. Some of the characteristics that only belonged to the Sage Realm had also appeared on his body. If I kill you today, my state of mind will improve, and I'll directly break into the Sage Realm. So die. Ao Chaozong had already shaped Yi Shiwen as an unparalleled enemy in his mind. The advantage of doing so was that if he could kill Yi Shiwen, his mind would be liberated, and his spiritual cultivation would improve by leaps and bounds. However, on the other hand, if one couldn't kill Yi Shiwen, then this knot in one's heart would turn into a heart devil and devour one alive. This was a cultivation method with both advantages and disadvantages. So, no one would dare to act recklessly unless they were extremely confident. Do you really think you've got me? Yi Shiwen said coldly, not showing any signs of being at a disadvantage. Ao Chaozong's iron halberd shot through the air, shattering the sky. It truly turned into a long dragon. The iron halberd in his hand was forged from the spine of a powerful dragon god who had fallen. It was very terrifying. Some Sage Realm experts could not help but change their expressions when they saw that move. That was close to the Sage Realm. Just as this long dragon took to the skies, the surroundings instantly turned into a kingdom of the dragon tribe. Countless mystical dragons soared in the skies and lived within. That's a kingdom of dragons. A divine kingdom. It's a divine kingdom. Ao Chaozong actually used a divine kingdom. Someone exclaimed. It's really a divine kingdom that's about to take shape. Once his divine kingdom takes shape, it'll be really bad. I didn't expect his cultivation to have already reached this level. He was still hiding it before. It doesn't matter what abilities that deadly scholar has. No matter how strong he is, he won't be able to fight against a divine kingdom. That's right. The only thing that can fight against a Sage Realm divine kingdom is the divine kingdom itself. With that, no one was optimistic about Yi Shiwen's chances. The tables had turned, and Yi Shiwen had fallen from the upper hand to the lower hand. Let's wait and see what that deadly scholar is going to do. The moment the divine kingdom appeared, Yi Shiwen felt that his entire body was surrounded by endless god rule chains. He could not see it from the outside, but he could feel that it was a divine kingdom. Even if it was a divine kingdom that had yet to take shape, it still had the power to completely suppress someone at the pinnacle of the eternal realm. Divine kingdoms were different from realms. Realms were formed by the condensation of countless laws of the world. All of the laws were still the same as the world, but the emphasis was different. Some people cultivated the way of thunder, and the laws of thunder would be especially active. However, divine kingdoms were different. It was a place that was completely controlled by the Divine Master. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This was not a legend. This was going to be tricky. Chapter 2478. So, this is your trump card? Yi Shiwen's expression was solemn. He was surrounded by countless divine laws. He opened his eye of redemption and discovered that the rules of the arena had been modified. He could do whatever he wanted. That was the most terrifying part. Whoosh, whoosh. Thunder and lightning rained down from Yi Shiwen's body. He opened up his own domain of thunder and lightning, and forcibly resisted against Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom. However, his domain of thunder and lightning could only cover a radius of 3 feet. The rest of the domain was completely compressed. The might of divine kingdom was too terrifying. If it was a fully formed divine kingdom, Yi Shiwen wouldn't even have the opportunity to open up his domain of thunder and lightning. It's useless. You can't shake off my divine kingdom, Ao Chaozong said coldly. The iron halberd in his hand burst into bursts of astonishing light. Yi Shiwen clearly saw that Ao Chaozong couldn't condense a divine kingdom by himself. It was likely that he borrowed the power of the iron halberd, just like how he used the ancestral dragon Dao diagram to condense a great magical power. However, it couldn't be helped. The Dragon Island had been passed down for countless years. It had all kinds of secret treasures and magical powers. This was something that others could only envy. Die. Ao Chaozong continued to expand his divine kingdom while attacking Yi Shiwen with his halberd. Everyone knew that he was truly angry. He wanted to crush Yi Shiwen to death with his supreme strength. Not only because Yi Shiwen had seized the ancestral dragon's Dao teaching diagram, but also because Jiren Wang had beaten him up. He wanted to clear his name and take back the honor that belonged to him. I want to form a divine kingdom. No one can stop me. No one. Ao Chaozong's spiritual power was surging. The iron halberd in his hand was emitting a powerful dragon's aura. It was like a powerful divine dragon that was about to be resurrected. Yi Shiwen kept retreating and resisting. The power of the divine kingdom was more terrifying than he had imagined. Even with his strength, he felt that it was difficult to resist. However, he didn't show any signs of fear, nor did he show any emotional fluctuations. His eyes were as calm as still water, without a single ripple. Within his body, the mysterious space was frantically analyzing a lot of information about this divine kingdom. This was a rare opportunity. Usually, when would a divine kingdom be presented to him so openly for him to comprehend? Although this was a very thrilling environment, it was indeed a rare opportunity. If it was a complete divine kingdom, he would have been defeated long ago. It would have been impossible for him to have the time to comprehend it. He kept retreating and defending. The entire scene was instantly under Ao Chaozong's control. I didn't expect Ao Chaozong to have such hidden strength. I couldn't tell just now. It seems like it's not that Ao Chaozong is weak, but Jiren Wang is too strong. The outcome of the battle should be decided now. No one can fight against a god nation unless they are an expert of the Divine Master Realm. No, he actually has a flaw. Feng Nantian squinted his eyes and said, Ao Chaozong's biggest flaw is that his god kingdom is not condensed by himself. Instead, he relies on the dragon halberd in his hand. Just to maintain this god kingdom requires a huge amount of magic power. With his magic power, no matter how strong it is, he can't keep it up forever. Once it collapses, he will die. And that deadly scholar is probably waiting for this opportunity. It's just a matter of who can persist in the end. At this time, although the people outside didn't have the foresight of Feng Nantian, they gradually realized that something was wrong. Although Ao Chaozong's attacks were very fierce, Yi Shiwen was in a very difficult situation. It seemed as if he was a small boat that would be submerged in monstrous waves at any time. However, no matter how many attacks were launched, Yi Shiwen was always able to block all the attacks just in time. Although he was in a difficult situation, and many wounds had appeared on his body, but they were not fatal. Could it be that he is waiting for Ao Chaozong's spiritual power to be exhausted? That's right, this is his only chance. Some people with sharp eyes had already guessed some clues. Ao Chaozong was using the power of the entire Divine Kingdom to launch a surprise attack. Originally, his strength was on par with Yi Shiwen's, but he was able to beat Yi Shiwen, who was in peak condition. This was the best proof. However, he still lacked the last straw that broke the camel's back. Endless murderous intent burst out of Ao Chaozong's eyes. He quickly guessed Yi Shiwen's plan and said coldly, "You want to exhaust my spiritual power? Do you think that's possible? Don't even think about it." As he spoke, Ao Chaozong flipped his palm, and a golden fruit appeared. This fruit was shaped like a divine dragon, and it was about to break the seal and fly into the endless void at any time. Many people outside swallowed their saliva. Just by looking at its appearance, they could tell that it was not an ordinary treasure. Could it be the medicinal dragon fruit? Legend has it that only by soaking in endless dragon's blood can it condense into a treasure of heaven and earth. Holy sh*t, they even have such a rare fruit. The Dragon Island is really heaven-defying. Some people couldn't help but exclaim. To them, this kind of magical elixir was only seen in legends. Even Feng Nantian was a little envious. This medicinal dragon fruit's value was immeasurable. Ao Chaozong was indeed worthy of being a talent that the Dragon Island had spent a lot of effort to nurture. It could be said that he had produced all kinds of magical treasures. It should be the medicinal dragon fruit. If we have the support of the medicinal dragon fruit, this life-snatching scholar's plan will be completely in vain. Feng Nantian said with pity. As soon as he finished speaking, the medicinal dragon fruit in Ao Chaozong's hand flew up and circled above his head. Traces of medicinal power directly entered Ao Chaozong's body. He didn't even need to swallow it, and it quickly replenished the spiritual power in his body that had been exhausted. The effect of the medicinal dragon fruit was needless to say. With a medicinal dragon fruit by his side, he wouldn't have to worry about his spiritual power running out. Moreover, this medicinal dragon fruit had been preserved very well. Its roots were still intact, and it could be replanted. The consumed medicinal power could also be rapidly replenished. Its effect and value were limitless. With the replenishment of the medicinal dragon fruit, Ao Chaozong's attacks became even more unbridled. He had used all the big moves that he had been afraid of before, and Yi Shiwen found it even more difficult to resist. In the eyes of an outsider, it was a big question how long Yi Shiwen could resist. That life-snatching scholar has completely lost the ability to fight back. He can only hide at the edge of the arena and keep struggling to catch his breath. His physical body is truly terrifying. I've seen his physical body getting shattered by Ao Chaozong several times. However, it would reform in the blink of an eye. It's said that an Eternal Realm expert can recover as long as he has a single cell. However, that still requires time. I'm afraid that even an ordinary Eternal Realm expert at the peak wouldn't be able to achieve such a feat. A big shot from the ancient Phoenix realm couldn't help but sigh and say, "Indeed, that life-snatching scholar is very strong. He can definitely be considered as a peerless genius. He can contend against Ao Chaozong, who is at the peak of the Eternal Realm with a cultivation of the Eternal Realm intermediate stage. He should be proud of this achievement." Everyone wasn't a fool. If they had thought that Yi Shiwen had concealed his strength at the beginning, and had only displayed the strength of the Eternal Realm intermediate stage, then they could clearly see that he was indeed at the Eternal Realm intermediate stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shown any signs of exploding in such a critical moment. If either of them were to suffer any damage, I'm afraid the powerful existences behind them wouldn't let it go so easily. The clash between the two geniuses will happen sooner or later. It's a pity that there's still a huge gap between Feng Zihao and those two. I thought that even if he couldn't be compared to the powerful existences like Ji Renwang who dominated the Kurfürst Road, he would still be able to reign supreme among his peers. But now, it seems that he can't even be mentioned in the same breath as those two. The big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm didn't have any bias towards those two. After all, they weren't from their clan. Moreover, the one who emerged victorious was very likely to become the son-in-law of their clan. At this time, Yi Shiwen was constantly resisting. He was constantly blasted away by the eruption of Ao Chaozong. He looked to be in a complete mess. Ao Chaozong was indeed a formidable opponent. In fact, he was more terrifying than any of the formidable opponents that Yi Shiwen had encountered so far. He was able to condense a divine nation at the undead realm. Even if he had the help of a divine tool, it was still very astonishing. After such an intense collision, his Thunder Dragon halberd was already full of cracks. The Thunder Dragon halberd was only refined by him on the spot. Compared to the iron halberd in Ao Chaozong's hand, there was a clear gap. It was very close to a top-grade divine tool. At this rate, it was inevitable that the halberd would directly collapse. However, although he was in such a mess, the effect was excellent. He had a fundamental breakthrough in his understanding of the divine nation. Originally, he only had a superficial understanding of the nature of the divine nation. He could only understand it from the ancient books, but now he had a deep and clear understanding of it. He was no longer confused about what the divine nation was. When he reached this stage in the future, condensing a divine nation that belonged to him would only be a matter of course. Even the universe composed of countless galaxies within his body was undergoing a transformation. This was the way that Yi Shiwen deduced some changes in the divine nation. He was constantly transforming the universe of galaxies within his body into a vast divine nation. Although it was just the beginning, it was already an extremely good start. But this is as far as it goes. Yi Shiwen deflected an attack from Ao Chaozong. The aura on his body was expanding. Although he wanted to continue comprehending it so that it would be easier for him to condense a divine nation in the future, time waited for no man. If he continued to passively take a beating like this, he would be beaten to death. Ao Chaozong's attack was like a falling mountain. He had already comprehended the most crucial part. All that was left was to deduce the other parts in preparation for him to condense a divine nation. "I'll crush your divine nation in one move," Yi Shiwen shouted. Something came out of his body. Chapter 2479. Everyone was stunned. Yi Shiwen actually said that he could destroy Ao Chaozong's divine kingdom with a single move? How was that possible? Destroying a divine kingdom with a single move? To them, this was no different from a legend. How could Yi Shiwen do it? "Why don't you give it a try then?" Ao Chaozong roared. At first, he was shocked, but then he threw that uneasy feeling to the back of his mind. What a joke! If a divine kingdom could be destroyed so easily, it would not have become a powerful weapon for divine masters to suppress other gods below the divine master level. Something that no one could see clearly came out of Yi Shiwen's body. Vaguely, everyone could only see a giant decapitated dragon descending from the sky, crashing into Ao Chaozong's divine kingdom. As if triggering a chemical reaction, Ao Chaozong's divine kingdom, which was originally extremely tyrannical, began to crumble inch by inch in front of everyone. The dragon's soul within the iron halberd that was about to awaken seemed to have encountered something horrifying and instantly retracted. This divine kingdom was sustained by the iron halberd itself. Now that the dragon's soul within the iron halberd was scared away, the entire divine kingdom completely crumbled in an instant. Everyone was stunned. They had never thought that things would turn out like this. Ao Chaozong was completely taken aback. He had never imagined that his god kingdom would actually shatter, and that it would shatter in an instant. It wasn't just a little bit, but all of it in an instant. What kind of technique is that? He could not even see clearly what was happening. All he felt was a sense of palpitation that came from the bottom of his heart, shrouding his mind in an instant. It was as if he had met the natural enemy of his species. This was unprecedented. There were many species that dared to eat dragons, such as the golden divine Ho and the golden-winged roc. However, those who dared to do so were the experts of their species. On the other hand, if the experts of the dragon race wanted to take revenge, they could also kill each other. It could only be considered as a mutual predator, and not a natural enemy. At the dragon race's level, there were almost no other natural enemies, and it was impossible for any creature to become the dragon race's natural enemy. However, he had such a feeling in his heart, and it was definitely not an illusion. However, he did not have time to see clearly. There was a mysterious fluctuation hidden on the decapitated dragon's body, isolating everyone from prying eyes. Whoosh! While Ao Chaozong was still in a daze, Yi Shiwen, who had destroyed the divine kingdom in an instant, had already arrived in front of him. He opened his palm, and countless lightning bolts condensed, instantly transforming into a lightning spear that pierced into Ao Chaozong's chest. Roar! With a deafening roar, Ao Chaozong's chest was pierced through, and his entire body was sent flying, leaving a trail of blood in the air. He had suffered serious injuries in this fight, and the medicinal dragon fruit on his head hadn't even had the time to fly out when it was grabbed by Yi Shiwen. He was thoroughly enraged. Although undead realm experts were known to be able to resurrect as long as a single cell still existed, and their recovery ability was extremely powerful, but in fact, the difficulty of recovery was different depending on the location of the injury. His entire heart was stabbed into minced meat by Yi Shiwen's spear, and the damage was so great that only his head exploded. What is that thing in his hand? It can actually destroy a divine kingdom? Everyone was shocked. The thing in Yi Shiwen's hand was just too mysterious. Especially those who didn't have high hopes for Yi Shiwen. They felt like they had been slapped in the face. Do you think you still have the chance? The power of lightning continued to erupt from Yi Shiwen's body, and another lightning spear was formed, blasting towards Ao Chaozong. Boom! Ao Chaozong's entire body was blasted away again. Both of his trump cards had been destroyed by Yi Shiwen. He had just stood up and was about to counterattack when the terrifying lightning in the sky erupted once again. It was none other than the Thunder Emperor sky-piercing cannon. Crackle! Countless lightning bolts crackled, and in an instant, the endless power of lightning came crashing down, directly blasting Ao Chaozong's body. Kaboom! The terrifying power blasted half of Ao Chaozong's body off, and he looked extremely miserable. He didn't even have time to resist or react, and this time, he was severely injured again. Ao Chaozong retreated step by step, and his face revealed a look of horror. He no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance, nor did he have the demeanor of a peerless character. This was not the case even when he was fighting against Ji Renwang. When he was fighting against Ji Renwang, even if he was defeated, he would still think that his cultivation was far inferior to his opponent. Most importantly, he hadn't used his trump cards yet, and it was still unknown who would emerge victorious if they were to fight in the same realm in the future. But now, his opponent's cultivation was lower than his, and yet he had consecutively destroyed 2 of his trump cards. He suffered heavy losses, and suffered a double loss. This had cast a shadow on his invincible heart. He no longer had the same invincible confidence he had in the beginning. Didn't you want to kill me? Didn't you want to challenge Ji Renwang? Where's your confidence? Yi Shiwen took a step forward and rushed towards him. The medicine dragon fruit had been tamed by him, and was now under his control. In a short time, he had recovered more than half of his spiritual power and launched another attack. He directly blasted a punch, and the sky collapsed, and the earth cracked. Puff! Ao Chaozong was hit by the punch, and the flesh that he had recovered with great difficulty cracked again. His whole body was sent flying, and blood sprayed everywhere in the sky. It's over. Ao Chaozong is really finished this time. Even the most reluctant person had to admit it. This deadly scholar is too terrifying. He can even destroy a divine nation. His means are more terrifying than we thought. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. This was completely different from when his clone was defeated. Previously, it was only his clone that was defeated, and it did not affect his invincible heart. But now that his real body was defeated, it had completely affected his invincible heart, and he felt despair. You can't accept this? You don't need to struggle anymore. You're destined to be a loser, and you can't beat me. Yi Shiwen attacked again, and his fist blasted Ao Chaozong, who was still flying in midair, directly to the ground. A deep crack was left on the indestructible arena, and it looked extremely ferocious. Not only did he want to defeat Ao Chaozong, but more importantly, he wanted to truly crush his confidence and destroy his room for future growth. Otherwise, if such a person passed this stage, he would become a great enemy. Being merciful to one's enemy was the greatest cruelty to oneself. How could Yi Shiwen not understand this principle? No, I can't let him continue. Feng Nantian finally decided to intervene. Ao Chaozong had lost any chance of turning the tables, but he was not willing to crush Ao Chaozong's confidence. At least not in the ancient Phoenix realm, or else he would not be able to answer to Dragon Island. He directly broke the void, grabbed Ao Chaozong, and sent him out. Yi Shiwen did not intervene. In fact, it was useless for him to intervene. A king-ranked martial artist was not someone he could interfere with right now. But it was enough. He had gained a lot from this battle. The ancestral dragon's Taoist diagram and the medicine dragon fruit were all on the surface. Most importantly, he had gained an earth-shattering understanding of the structure of the god nation. He had gained a lot from this battle. What he used just now was the broken dragon stone. According to legend, it was a mysterious instrument that the dragon race hated the most, and it had a great restraining effect on the dragon race. Now that he had tested it, the broken dragon stone broke Ao Chaozong's god nation in almost an instant. If it was not Ao Chaozong but Ji Renwang, he would not have chosen to use the broken dragon stone. It would have been safer to use the 10,000 technique roulette. Everything was under his control, and he had finally won. For this victory, he had put in a lot of effort and calculated a lot. The final winner of the groom search contest has been decided. He's none other than the life-stealing scholar from the martial sect. Feng Nanshan's majestic voice had just finished speaking when he saw the figure of the deadly scholar slowly changing in the center of the arena. It turned into Yi Shiwen. Feng Nanshan's eyes widened, and boundless anger rushed to his head. He had been tricked. He had been tricked. He felt his vision go black, and he felt dizzy. He had been tricked by someone, and by the same person at that. He had tried everything he could think of to block off all threats, and yet he had still succeeded. He had become the champion. At this moment, he finally knew where the uneasiness in his heart had come from. It turned out that he had miscalculated. This guy had disguised himself as someone else. Most importantly, he had not realized it at all. It was a complete humiliation, and he had been fooled by someone else. He had opened his transcendence eyes to look at the real bodies of everyone in the top 10, and he had not seen anything wrong with them, including this so-called deadly scholar. In other words, everyone had misjudged this deadly scholar. Everyone had thought that he was just a so-called genius that the martial sect had groomed. They had not expected him to be Yi Shiwen in disguise. Be it that suspicious Kuan Peng or Yi Wudi, they were all pretenses. They were all targets to attract everyone's attention. Thinking of this, he had the urge to vomit blood. Of course, Yi Shiwen had not colluded with Yi Wudi. However, from Feng Nanshan's point of view, Yi Shiwen and Yi Wudi had colluded long ago. One was to attract attention, and the other was to act in the dark. Their cooperation was flawless, and they had played everyone. It was not just Feng Nantian. Everyone was in an uproar. Chapter 2480. Who is that? Could it be the original identity of the deadly scholar? Someone was stunned. He pointed at Yi Shiwen's main body and said, "Not everyone knew about Yi Shiwen's main body. Oh my god, it's Yi Shiwen. My god, the deadly scholar is Yi Shiwen." Yi Shiwen? What, he's that Yi Shiwen? Everyone was in an uproar. They were completely dumbfounded. One must know that many people had been discussing whether Yi Shiwen would come or not. But they hadn't seen Yi Shiwen appear even when the martial arts competition had begun. They were very disappointed, and some of them had even said a lot of strange words. This was like giving them a hard slap in the face, making them see stars. Oh my god, how did Yi Shiwen become so powerful in just 100 years? Someone had seen Yi Shiwen fight 100 years ago. Although Yi Shiwen had already amazed many people back then, it was only amazing. It was far from enough to shock everyone. Now that he had made consecutive breakthroughs, even Ao Chaozong, who was at the peak of the undead realm, was no match for him and was beaten up like a dog. It could be said that the legends about Yi Shiwen were merely legends. However, everyone had witnessed his strength today. There was no rumor that Yi Shiwen's cultivation in the way of lightning has been raised to such a shocking level. In other words, in order to hide his identity, Yi Shiwen could not use many of his original skills. He did not use his full strength at all, but even so, he still beat Ao Chaozong up. This is completely unimaginable. Thinking of this, the crowd was even more shocked. He did not use his full strength, but he already defeated Ao Chaozong. Wouldn't it be even more terrifying if he used his full strength? They couldn't imagine how tyrannical Yi Shiwen would be if he were to use all of his means at his disposal. It really is him. Yi Wudi was originally very depressed, regretting not being able to stop this in the end. He was even thinking of ways to ruin it. He did not expect that the deadly scholar who won in the end was actually Yi Shiwen in disguise. I said he was really strange. Very strange. Just as I expected, Yi Wudi said while rubbing his chin. He felt very strange just now because the sentence was too smooth. His words were actually what Yi Shiwen had unintentionally instilled in him back then. But after not seeing him for so many years, he has become even stronger. As expected of a monster, Yi Wudi said. Although Yi Shiwen always envied him, in fact, he was secretly shocked by Yi Shiwen. He was not a normal person at all. It was impossible for a normal human to reach this stage, especially in such a short period of time. With his inheritance, he could only be described as a monster. Hey, if that's the case, you should have known about it long ago. Why didn't you inform me? Yi Wudi looked at Kuan Peng beside him. At that moment, Kuan Peng had already transformed to the height of a human, but it was still in its original form. If he doesn't want me to say it, I won't say it either, Kuan Peng said with a mischievous smile. He recognized Yi Wudi. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't dare to stand next to him. There's going to be a good show. Feng Nantian knows that he has been fooled again. I'm afraid he's going to explode. Ah. Yi Wudi laughed loudly, as if he was going to watch a joke. At that moment, not only Yi Wudi but everyone also realized this. If it was only the deadly scholar, perhaps Feng Nantian would be happy to accept it. But what about Yi Shiwen? Yi Shiwen, who had fought against him several times, was probably not on his list of people he would approve of. Moreover, this time, he had been fooled by Yi Shiwen in front of everyone. No one could tell that the deadly scholar was actually Yi Shiwen. One could imagine how well he had hidden it. Everyone looked at Feng Nantian, including Yi Shiwen, who was on the distant cloud platform. They were all anxiously waiting for Feng Nantian's attitude. The initiative was not in his hands. Once again, he deeply felt his powerlessness. If he was already a king-level expert, he could directly take Hua Menghan away. Humph, the winner is Hidden Valley's Yi Shiwen. Feng Nanshan's voice came from the void. Many people had already guessed that Feng Nantian would not go back on his words in front of everyone. Otherwise, the ancient Phoenix realm would not have any credibility to speak of. In particular, as the new clan leader of the Phoenix clan, his prestige would suffer a heavy blow. However, he did not do anything to make things difficult for Yi Shiwen. Instead, he directly acknowledged Yi Shiwen. This also surprised many people. Many big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm also looked at Feng Nantian in surprise. Everyone knew how resolute he had been in opposing Yi Shiwen previously. Could it be that he was really going to compromise and accept Yi Shiwen for the sake of his so-called reputation? Feng Nantian stood up, turned around and walked towards the depths of the void. Although he is not the most suitable candidate in my mind, since he has come this far, what's wrong with giving him a chance? On the thrones, many big shots looked at each other in dismay. This was because they understood that Feng Nantian did not like Yi Shiwen very much. However, he had already changed his initial opinion in his heart. Perhaps Yi Shiwen becoming the husband of the heavenly Phoenix girl wasn't a bad thing for the ancient Phoenix realm. Looking at his completely disappearing silhouette, a big shot slowly said, "Although I don't like his overbearing style, I have to admit that he is perhaps using another method to protect the ancient Phoenix realm." Many big shots couldn't help but nod in a dignified manner. Feng Nantian was different from the Phoenix King, who was loved and respected by everyone. Feng Nanshan's way of doing things was overbearing. He would do anything to achieve his goals. One used virtue to win over others, while the other used force to suppress others. They had two completely different styles. Many people in the ancient Phoenix realm had different opinions about Feng Nanshan's way of doing things. They weren't very convinced. Even now, many people didn't approve of his method. However, they couldn't help but admit that he might have selfish motive. However, he was also using his own methods to protect this ancient race that had been passed down since ancient times. At this moment, everyone outside heard Feng Nantian personally admitting Yi Shiwen's identity. Everything had gone so smoothly. It was completely different from what everyone had expected. At first, everyone had thought that they would have to go through a confrontation. However, they hadn't expected Feng Nantian to give in so easily. Why did Feng Nantian give in so easily? Yi Shiwen was also somewhat puzzled. He muttered, "But it's finally over no matter what. Menghan, I've come to find you." Chapter 2481. The marriage contest of the ancient Phoenix realm could be considered to have come to an end at this point. However, the uproar caused by this matter had just begun to ferment. Yi Shiwen had become famous after this battle. He had defeated many powerful enemies with the identity of the deadly scholar, and had finally become the champion of the marriage contest. He could be ranked among the top among the deities of the present age. On the other hand, the ancient Phoenix realm had suffered a double loss this time. They had lost a lot of face. They had originally denied the engagement between Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan, and had tried to find a new husband for Hua Menghan. However, they hadn't expected that it would be Yi Shiwen in the end. This was a serious slap in the face. It was unknown how many people were secretly looking at the ancient Phoenix realm as a joke. After all, it was still the same person. It could be said that their efforts during this period of time had been in vain. Meanwhile, even more major forces were paying attention to the possible alliance between the ancient Phoenix realm and the Hidden Valley. This made them slightly relieved. After all, an alliance with the Hidden Valley was better than an alliance between two inheritances that had produced emperor lords. The consequences of an alliance between two inheritances that had produced emperor lords would be very serious. The people of the regal sex would be in a state of panic. Especially in this era of sudden changes, many people felt uneasy. Many experts had come to participate in the marriage contest of the ancient Phoenix realm this time. However, nobody knew how many of them had secretly come with the intention of sabotaging the contest. Perhaps there weren't many who had truly come with sincerity. Many people guessed that the reason why the ancient Phoenix realm hadn't rejected Yi Shiwen in the end was that it would be more shameful. At least, Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan were sincere, rather than looking for a troublemaker. Otherwise, it would be even more shameful. Moreover, the Hidden Valley wasn't the most suitable choice. However, it was an ancient regal sect that had existed for a long time. Compared to those sects that only had one regal expert, it was many times stronger. Therefore, it could be regarded as a suitable external aid. Moreover, cooperating with the Hidden Valley wouldn't prevent them from forming an alliance with other forces. It wasn't necessary to use the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden as a link for cooperation every time. However, the ancient Phoenix realm had still lost a lot of face this time. However, some people also said that the ancient Phoenix world had profited greatly. Yi Shiwen's strength and innate talent naturally didn't need to be mentioned. How many years had it been since he had confirmed his Tao? Yet, he was already on par with a contemporary genius like Ao Chaozong, who had confirmed his Tao for tens of thousands of years. With such strength, he could be considered as one of the best geniuses even if he were to be placed in the Emperor's inheritance. At this time, Yi Shiwen, Yi Wudi, and Little Kuan Peng were heading towards the depths of the ancient Phoenix world. Under the guidance of a demigod of the ancient Phoenix world, they went to look for Hua Menghan. Since Feng Nantian had already agreed, then there was no point in continuing to isolate the two of them. "Haha, sister-in-law will definitely be shocked when she sees us," Yi Wudi said excitedly. He had followed Yi Shiwen for a long time. He had seen a lot of things. It could be said that the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. The corners of Yi Shiwen's mouth curled into a smile. He couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He hadn't seen her for many years. However, he wasn't as excited as he had imagined when he saw Hua Menghan again. He just stood there in a daze and remained silent. "You've lost weight?" Yi Shiwen opened his mouth and said. Hua Menghan had become even thinner than she had been several hundred years ago. "You haven't changed." Hua Menghan looked at Yi Shiwen with a smile. It seemed as if he was always full of vigor. It seemed as if nothing in the world could stop him. He would still be like this even after 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Yi Shiwen pulled Hua Menghan's small hand and said, "I've finally done it. No one can stop us from being together now." "I knew that you could do it." Hua Menghan nodded. A ray of light flickered in her eyes. Cut the long story short. Suddenly, an old man appeared in the void. "This is?" Yi Shiwen asked. "This is my master's old subordinate, Old Shin," Hua Menghan replied. The master she was talking about was naturally her master, the Phoenix King. The Phoenix King had been in charge of the ancient Phoenix world for so many years. So, it was normal for him to have some old subordinates. It was impossible for them to have died along with the Phoenix King in the god burial star ocean. This Old Shin wasn't a member of the Phoenix race. So, he didn't have that special aura. However, his strength was unfathomable. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't see the depth of his strength. However, he had a vague feeling that he had met the Flame Lord. There was only one kind of feeling, unfathomable. "Greetings, Old Shin." Yi Shiwen cupped his hands in obeisance and said. Old Shin didn't say anything. In fact, it could be said that he didn't want to deal with Yi Shiwen. In fact, he didn't even want to talk to Yi Shiwen. "Make it short. Time is precious," Old Shin said in an ice-cold manner. He only smiled when he was talking to Hua Menghan. Hua Menghan said with an awkward expression on her face. Then, she explained everything to Yi Shiwen. It turned out that the person in front of them wasn't Hua Menghan's true self. Instead, it was just an incarnation that she had created. Her true self wasn't here. In fact, it wasn't even in the ancient Phoenix world. Instead, it was in another place. It was buried deep in the secret territory of the Heavenly Phoenix Lake. This secret territory belonged to the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline. It was left behind when the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline was still in charge of the ancient Phoenix world. This secret territory belonged to the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline. Only the bloodline of the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline could open it. However, the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline didn't have many descendants. Later on, the inheritance was severed. In fact, many people didn't even know about this secret. As a result, a lot of preparation work was needed to open this secret territory. The Phoenix King had originally been in charge of this work. However, the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline had been handed over to Old Shin before the Phoenix King had gone to the God Burial Star Ocean. The secret territory had just been sorted out and opened a few decades ago. Hua Menghan had entered it at that time. She had also left a way out. If Yi Shiwen hadn't won the championship in the end, and Hua Menghan had hidden inside to cultivate, who could have done anything to her? Unless one possessed the bloodline of the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline, they wouldn't be able to open it and enter it. This secret territory contained the inheritance of the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline. It was different from the inheritance left behind in the ancient Phoenix world. It was an inheritance that belonged to the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline. However, that secret territory was also isolated from everything. Hua Menghan could only project her spirit and transform it into an incarnation for a short period of time. It was impossible to continue for a long time. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but reveal a somewhat disappointed look on his face. He had painstakingly won the championship, but Hua Menghan couldn't come out to meet him. You don't have to worry. The road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. Sister-in-law had a great adventure inside. Maybe she'll surpass you after she comes out. Ha ha ha. I've also heard of the legend of the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline's secret territory. It used to be a legendary clan. Yi Wudi comforted him. Yes. Don't worry. I've gained a lot inside. You must also work hard to cultivate outside. Don't lose to me when the time comes. Hua Menghan said with a sweet smile. She didn't smile much. She would only reveal such a beautiful smile when she was facing Yi Shiwen. You must be careful. Even if it's an inheritance, you can't be careless. Yi Shiwen suddenly thought of Yi Qianshan's matter. His heart tightened as he said, Don't worry. I'll be fine. Hua Menghan said. Then, her incarnation disappeared in front of Yi Shiwen. I hope that you won't tell anyone about what you've heard and seen here. I don't want anyone to know about the Heavenly Phoenix Lake's secret territory. Old Shen shot a cold glance at Yi Shiwen. His attitude didn't change because of his relationship with Hua Menghan. Senior, don't worry. I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded and said. It was a pity. However, he was relieved to know that Hua Menghan was fine. She was still receiving the inheritance and undergoing a transformation. This was the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline's secret territory. It was much better than the Death Lord's unreliable inheritance. The only thing that made him depressed was that it was over before he could explain to Hua Menghan about Yi Qianshan's matter. You're the son-in-law recognized by the Phoenix King. Feng Nantian has nothing to say this time. You did well. You didn't disappoint the Phoenix King's expectations. Old Shin said. After some time, you can ask the Hidden Valley to send someone over to propose marriage. You can get married after the young lady has come out of seclusion. However, according to the Phoenix King's decree, one of your descendants must enter the ancient Phoenix realm and continue the bloodline of the Sky Phoenix. You must agree to this condition. Old Shin's words were very tough. He didn't give Yi Shiwen any chance to regret. Yi Shiwen looked a little embarrassed. However, this matter wasn't considered too much. If he and Hua Menghan had a few children in the future, one of them could enter the ancient Phoenix domain. It would be a good choice. I won't dare to disobey, Yi Shiwen said immediately. That's good. You can go back. I'll inform you when Miss has finished her closed-door training. You can prepare for the wedding at that time. Old Shen disappeared into the void as soon as he finished speaking. Yi Shiwen and the other two looked at each other. Yi Wudi patted Old Shen's shoulder and said, "Take your time." The three of them weren't in a hurry to leave the ancient Phoenix domain. They found a mountain peak in the ancient Phoenix domain. Then, two people and a bird sat down. "It's been a long time since we've sat down like this," Yi Wudi said. "Haha, I heard that you've become the Heavenly Court's master now. There must be a lot of people looking for trouble with you." Yi Shiwen laughed and said, "They're all people who overestimate themselves. They think that they're qualified to enter the Heavenly Court just because they have the Demon Emperor's bloodline. They're really idiots," Yi Wudi said disdainfully. Then, he patted Kuan Peng's head and said, "This kid is the descendant of the Heavenly Court's Demon Master. How about you lend him to me for some time?" Chapter 2482. Roar! Young Kuan Peng roared in a low voice. He almost bit off Yi Wudi's hand. This little guy knew that Yi Wudi and Yi Shiwen were close, but he didn't know Yi Wudi was that close. Hee. Yi Wudi smiled brightly. "Why are you so fierce? You just want to use his name." Yi Shiwen glanced at Yi Wudi speechlessly. As soon as Yi Wudi said that, he knew what Yi Wudi was planning. The ancient Heavenly Court declined. Not only did the Golden Crow bloodline die, but even the ancient demon master Kuan Peng, who was on the same level as the two demon emperors, also died. His descendants didn't show up for a long time. Back then, Demon Master Kuan Peng also had many old subordinates. These people lived in seclusion after the ancient Heavenly Court declined. Once they were united, they would be an extremely powerful force. Moreover, he had only inherited the Demon Emperor's inheritance, and he had already attracted so many people's attention. If he could pull in the descendants of the ancient Demon Master, he would be able to shut a lot of people up. A Demon Emperor's inheritance, and a Demon Master's inheritance. The ancient Heavenly Court was finally starting to take shape. It was no longer an insignificant force. Don't make it sound so bad. This little guy can also be the Demon Master of the Heavenly Court. I will return the power and status of his ancestor in the Heavenly Court. You know, I also know some of the Demon Master's inheritance. If this little guy can get it, his cultivation will definitely improve by leaps and bounds," Yi Wudi said. Yi Shiwen pondered for a moment. This was indeed an excellent choice for young Kuan Peng. The Kurfürst Road will open in 1,000 years. I think, with your personality, you will definitely go in and try, right? Yi Wudi said to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't deny it. Yi Wudi had followed him for so long, he knew him too well. With our strength, if we wait for the next time, we will definitely be able to dominate. But now, it's not enough. In less than 1,000 years, I will also cultivate in seclusion, and walk the path of the Demon Emperor. Yi Wudi said, "If I'm not wrong, Hua Menghan must be walking the same path." Yi Wudi said, "If I'm not wrong, Hua Menghan must have walked on this path." In ancient times, many powerful and invincible figures would leave behind such a legacy. They would transform their cultivation process into a secret realm, where we can enter and comprehend everything they had sensed in the past. We can even participate in the great battles they had participated in. This is a very good way to hone people. This little guy's ancestor also had such a demon master path, which is in our ancient Heavenly Court. If he can come out one day, he will definitely revive the prestige of the Demon Master bloodline and become famous in the world. Yi Shiwen knew that Yi Wudi was raising conditions. Such conditions could not be said to be not generous. For Yi Wudi to be so serious, it must be a kind of extraordinary inheritance. The young master of the Azura clan, Man Yun, whom he knew, seemed to have entered a secret realm of inheritance left behind by the Azura Emperor. In that case, it should be similar. If it was him, he would definitely agree right away. Although there was danger, riches were sought amidst danger. In this world, there was no business that was guaranteed to be profitable. If he had followed the rules, it was hard to say if he would have reached the 10,000 years realm by now. However, this matter involved the little guy himself. He didn't want to overstep his boundaries and make a decision on his behalf. You decide this yourself. I won't make a decision for you, Yi Shiwen said. This kind of inheritance should be very dangerous. He turned to Yi Wudi and asked. Yes, many people couldn't bear it and were tortured to death in there. They might even experience some bloody battles in there. Many people who can become emperors have experienced countless bloody battles. As long as they can't bear it even once, they will die in there. However, if they can succeed, their future will be limitless. Yi Wudi didn't hide anything and said directly. So, isn't Meng Han in danger? Yi Shiwen asked. I don't think so. Although this kind of thing is very dangerous, the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline has been passed down for so long. They should be very experienced. At the very least, the degree of danger is much lower than ours. Yi Wudi said. Yi Shiwen was completely worried. However, it was useless for him to worry now. He could only hope that Hua Menghan could bear it. Both of them looked at the little guy. The little Kuan Pung thought carefully and said, I want to go and challenge the Demon Master Path. Good, you're a man, Yi Wudi said with a thumbs up and a carefree smile on his face. However, I have to go back and talk to my master about this. When it's done, I will go to the Heavenly Court to find you, said the little Kuan Pung. Yi Shiwen didn't say much. If it were him, he would also make the same choice. Naturally, he was in no position to say anything. How much do you know about the Kurfürst Road? Yi Shiwen asked Yi Wudi. He was now the master of the ancient Heavenly Court and had inherited the inheritance of the ancient Heavenly Court. Maybe he would know more about the Kurfürst Road. This time, he not only wanted to go to the Kurfürst Road, but he also wanted to go to the secret realm. It was self-evident how dangerous it was. He had to be fully prepared. Actually, we don't know much about this road because it appeared after the Second War of Resistance against the Heavens. That's what the records in the Heavenly Court say. Yi Wudi said. After that, only a few seniors in the ancient Heavenly Court had tried to challenge the Kurfürst Road, so we don't know much about it. However, according to the records they left behind, there is only one comment, which is that it's strange. It gives off a very strange feeling. So after that, no one tried to challenge the Kurfürst Road again. However, I heard that some people achieved enlightenment because of the Kurfürst Road. In this aspect, the ancient Heavenly Court has records about it. Yi Wudi said, in total there are 8. Some have come into being and become heroes of the world, while others have always been hidden and unknown. However, none of them can escape the records of our ancient Heavenly Court. 8 people. No wonder those people wanted to challenge the Kurfürst Road so crazily. There were actually so many emperors. Yi Shiwen was secretly shocked. In the myriad of worlds, imperial monarchs were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Other than some extraordinary times, most of the time, or even every tens of thousands of years, only one imperial monarch would be born. In recent times, only the Qin emperor had attained the Tao. The difficulty and dangers involved were self-evident. The life story of any emperor who was born would become something that people talked about. It was easy to imagine people's yearning for emperors. Since ancient times, only the Qin emperor had attained the Tao. There was a rumor that the great Tao seemed to have been locked, and no one could attain the Tao anymore. Even many experienced kings who had lived for millions of years or even tens of millions of years were unable to pry into the imperial monarch realm. Therefore, the Kurfürst Road seemed to be the only possible way to achieve enlightenment. No wonder everyone was crazy to challenge the Kurfürst Road. But who on earth set up such a shocking plan? Kurfürst Road, who on earth is choosing emperors, who is selecting emperors, Who is qualified to select emperors? Yi Shiwen asked a few questions in succession. This was also a question that had troubled countless people for countless years. But those who achieved enlightenment in the end also treated this topic as a taboo and were unwilling to talk about it. And if an emperor was unwilling to talk about it, would anyone dare to force him to talk about it? Therefore, this question had become a perennial problem. He was also shocked. No matter what the truth behind it was shocking enough. We, the ancient heavenly court, have always had people investigating this. Not just us, even other heritages have people investigating, but there has never been any news. The only thing that can be considered a clue is that the Qin emperor also fought his way into the Kurfürst road before he attained the Tao. Although we all know that his attainment of the Tao should have nothing to do with the Kurfürst road, he might know something. However, the Qin emperor has never said anything about this, so we can only speculate. Some people say that it might be a trap, while others say that it might not be a legacy left by an invincible figure in the distant past. As for the specifics, no one knows. Yi Wudi said. Yi Shiwen was silent. Even the ancient heavenly court didn't have many records in this regard. How many secrets were hidden in the Kurfürst road? Anyway, for me, no matter what, I have to challenge the Kurfürst road. It's not for the so-called opportunity. If I want to become an emperor, I have to kill my way to the invincible. I don't want anyone's charity, Yi Wudi said firmly, but this is indeed an excellent opportunity to train. Many people can have many adventures in it, and their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Yi Shiwen nodded. Yi Wudi's thoughts coincided with his. Those who became emperors were the strongest throughout the ages, and the strongest could never be achieved by others' charity. That way, his Tao would have flaws, and it would not be complete enough. Let me tell you, you'd better improve your strength quickly. I'm afraid that the world will be in chaos again, Yi Wudi said with a serious face. In our ancient heavenly court, there is a powerful figure who calculated a corner of the future. The chaotic Great Tribulation, blood will flow like rivers, the sky will fall, and the earth will crack. It might even involve the emperor. Moreover, no one knows when this Great Tribulation will come. Maybe it will come the next moment. Don't be fooled by our glory now, that's because the major forces are afraid of us, so they won't attack us. But once the Great Tribulation comes, everyone will go crazy and search for a chance of survival. Some ancient figures can kill us with a slap. The rebellion of the remnants of the heavenly race is just the prelude to this great chaos. Everything has just begun. I'm just reminding you to be careful. Don't die without knowing why. Although Yi Shiwen had some guesses, he didn't expect it to be as serious as Yi Wudi said. Chapter 2483. Even king-level powerhouses could not protect themselves during the Great Tribulation. They had to search for a chance of survival like crazy. It might even involve the legendary Emperor Lord. Once something involved the Emperor Lord, it would be a huge matter. No one knew exactly how many secrets were hidden in this. With the power of the ancient heavenly court, even a great tribulation that spread across several worlds wouldn't be able to do anything to them. The so-called invincible tribulation referred to this kind of power. Although it couldn't be compared to when it was at its peak, it wasn't weak now. What kind of calamity could make him so afraid? Yi Wudi himself didn't know. He only saw a corner of the future and saw an extremely terrifying scene. Although a great tribulation is a great opportunity, many people can stand out in every great tribulation. The demon emperor of the ancient heavenly court had the opportunity to transcend and become an emperor in such a great tribulation. However, there are even more people who died unknowingly. Yi Wudi said seriously. I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded. With such a serious topic, the three did not talk for long and went their separate ways. Yi Shiwen and young Kuan Peng returned to the Hidden Valley. There were still thousands of years before the Kurfürst road opened, so they were not in a hurry. After returning to the hidden valley, the two also went their separate ways. Young Kuan Pung would look for the Golden Rock old ancestor to talk about this matter. Yi Shiwen also went to look for the Lord of Flames. At this time, the Lord of Flames had already received the news that Yi Shiwen had won the championship. Well done, ha ha ha. Feng Nanshan's face must be very ugly now. The Lord of Flames laughed heartily. Obviously, he did not like Feng Nantian very much. I didn't see him, but he probably won't be any better. Yi Shiwen was also in a very good mood. He had been stifled for hundreds of years. He could not control his own fate and had to fight for the championship with all his might. All right, you did well this time. You will be rewarded. You don't have to worry about what happens next. We will take care of it. We will send people to the ancient Phoenix realm to propose marriage. The ancient Phoenix realm is still bigger than a horse. They are stronger than the Hidden Valley. This alliance will be very beneficial for the Hidden Valley, said the Lord of Flames. Just as the Flame Master had said, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even if the ancient Phoenix realm had declined, it would still be stronger than the Hidden Valley. There was no need to mention the benefits of this alliance for the Hidden Valley. I want to enter the Kurfürst's road. Yi Shiwen did not hide anything and said directly. What? You are going to enter the Kurfürst road? The Lord of Flames looked at Yi Shiwen in surprise. He didn't even know where he had heard about the legend of the Kurfürst road. You have to think carefully. Even I don't have much confidence in going there. It won't be easy for you to find the so-called opportunity there. Since ancient times, many outstanding people have entered and exited the Kurfürst road. However, only a few of them managed to obtain the so-called opportunity. I've thought it through. I have my reasons for going in, but it's not for that so-called opportunity. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, Since you're not going for that so-called opportunity, that's fine. That opportunity will probably gather a few of the most terrifying geniuses in the world. If you fight for it, you won't have a chance of survival. In order to fight for that opportunity, everyone will do anything. The Flame Master heaved a sigh of relief. At least Yi Shiwen wasn't stupid enough to mess around. His strength was considered not bad among the current generation. However, compared to those geniuses in the ancient times, there was no way he could be compared. However, since you've decided to enter, you can't give up in the next 1,000 years. It just so happens that you've made a great contribution this time. There's a place that can be opened to you, said the Flame Master. What place? Asked Yi Shiwen. It was discovered by a senior in the Hidden Valley by accident. It's an ancient road. This ancient road is very dangerous, but it's also very tough. If you want to survive in the Kurfürst road, you have to take this road. That's because the Kurfürst road might be even more terrifying than this, said the Flame Master. I don't know who left this ancient road behind, but the only thing I can be sure of is that it seems to be a mental journey left behind by a powerhouse who has surpassed the king level. It's just that this ancient road has been opened many times since ancient times. Many peerless geniuses of the Hidden Valley have entered it. Most of them have died in it, but some have walked out alive. One of them is me. In recent years, it's been a long time since anyone has reached the standard to open this ancient road. Normally, it won't be opened to the public anymore. That's because after a few more uses, this ancient road will also collapse. Yi Shiwen thought to himself. As expected, if this road had been opened before, the Flame Master would most likely be one of the top figures who walked out of it. Those who could walk out of it should all be the top figures. Now that the ancient road is about to collapse, the selection standard is much stricter than before. You're the first in all these years. Firstly, you're qualified. Secondly, it's to reward you for your great contribution to the Hidden Valley. I'll report this matter for you. However, before that, you'd better settle everything that you need to settle yourself. When the ancient road opens again, It will definitely be a few hundred years later," said the Flame Master. "Thank you, Your Honor. However, Your Honor seems to meet the requirements of the Kurfürst Road. Are you not going?" asked Yi Shiwen. He was looking forward to it. If he could have the Flame Master with him, then it would undoubtedly be much safer to enter the Kurfürst Road. "Me? I've already given up on the Kurfürst Road. I did venture into the Kurfürst Road in the past, but I've already given up on that unrealistic fantasy." The Flame Master laughed at himself. Even he didn't know if giving up was the right or wrong thing to do. However, he had seen too many ancient geniuses who had wasted their lives here. They could have been famous all over the world, but now they had wasted many years. "If that's the case, I'll take my leave first," said Yi Shiwen. "I'll come back after a month." "Go." Yi Shiwen didn't stay for long. This time, he would be away for a long time. It might be thousands of years. He might even die on the Kurfürst Road after that. It was an extremely dangerous place. Even someone like Yi Shiwen didn't have the confidence. He simply returned to the true martial domain. With his current cultivation, he could travel thousands of miles with a single thought. He didn't know how much more profound his martial arts had become. It only took him half an hour to return to the true martial domain from the hidden valley. The true martial domain didn't seem to be much different compared to a few hundred years ago. The only difference was that it had become more powerful. With the ancient books and treasures that Yi Shiwen had left behind, the true martial domain's strength had expanded very quickly. Not only had it recovered its vitality, but it had also conquered a few nearby worlds. Those ancient sects had all surrendered to the true martial domain. Especially the great changes that happened a few hundred years ago. Many ancient sects that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years had encountered a great disaster. Only the true martial domain had received Yi Shiwen's protection. Not only did it survive, but it had also developed greatly. Many sects could be considered to have understood the so-called gap. This was the gap. With Yi Shiwen's support, the true martial domain wasn't something that they could be compared to. In addition, the few demigods that Yi Shiwen had left behind had directly swept that part of the universe. Later, when the news of Yi Shiwen's attainment spread here, those scattered demigods didn't have the guts to attack the true martial domain. That was equivalent to finding trouble with a god. Who would have the guts to do so? More importantly, they weren't too interested in these low-level worlds in their eyes. They were only used as a transit point to head to the divine tombs. Therefore, they had developed greatly. When Yi Shiwen entered, he discovered that powerhouses of the 10,000 years realm were common. Their strength was more than a little stronger than before. Yi Shiwen had the idea of completing the laws of the true martial domain. In the past, this was an extremely difficult thing for him. However, it wasn't the case now. Not to mention that his comprehension had reached a whole new level. As long as the divine power left behind from the war was expelled, those damaged laws would naturally recover by themselves. The world also had its own self-recovery ability, so there was no need for others to worry about it. In this case, the true martial domain would undoubtedly become the well-deserved cultivation center of this universe. In the future, Yi Shiwen wouldn't even need to take action. Just by relying on the strength that the true martial domain slowly developed, it would be enough to suppress the other worlds. There was no need to conquer them. It was like the true martial domain had already become a higher-level plane. If the talents of the surrounding worlds wanted to cultivate to a higher level, they would have to go to the true martial domain. In that case, many powerful talents would automatically flow to the true martial domain, making the true martial domain even more powerful. For the true martial domain, the benefits were self-evident. However, this was just an idea. He planned to implement it after meeting his parent. For him, it wasn't difficult to complete this step. He easily found the location of the Yi clan. Currently, the Yi clan had developed into a big clan in the true martial domain because of Yi Shiwen. Although it hadn't been long since their rise, Yi Shiwen had left behind many backup plans. They weren't lacking in foundation. Under the leadership of Yi Feng, their development speed was extremely fast. Yi Shiwen's return didn't alarm too many people. He only informed his parents, especially his mother, Xia Chuanxue. She hadn't seen her son for hundreds of years. Her eyes suddenly turned red. "Brat, you didn't even come back to see us." Although she was rebuking, her tone was slowly filled with surprise. Third son is a person who does great things. How can he come back at any time? Yi Kongming couldn't help but say. However, his tone was extremely happy. Don't people who do great things need to take care of the family? Xia Chuanxue rolled her eyes at her husband and asked a question that made Yi Shiwen's scalp tingle. You're already so old. Have you found a wife yet? Chapter 2484. This question really made his scalp tingle. It was as if he had returned to the feeling of being urged to get married in his previous life. Look at how old you are, you're not a child anymore. Your elder brother's great-great-grandson can run all over the place, but you still don't have a partner. What about that Hua Menghan? Xia Chuanxue said. She still vaguely remembered about Hua Menghan. Although a long time had passed, but she and her son had been listed as the Heaven's Pride experts of Yiyuan School. It was not easy for her to forget. Not to mention, she was likely to be her daughter-in-law. Well, she is now in closed-door training. Our school has already proposed marriage to the ancient Phoenix world. We should be able to get married in a few years. Yi Shiwen said. Really? That's great. Xia Chuanxue's eyes lit up and said. Among her 3 children, this third child was the most capable and also the one who worried her the most. Not only did he go in and out of some extremely dangerous places all day long, but more importantly, he was still not married. No matter how old he was, in her eyes, her third child was still an underage child. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's appearance had not changed much. In the eyes of parents and elders, only after getting married could one be considered as growing up and considered as an adult. Why didn't you come back and discuss with us? Xia Chuanxue could not help but rebuke. She did not doubt the relationship between Yi Shiwen and them, but she was somewhat dissatisfied. Because it is a political marriage. It is mainly handled by the elders of the 2 sections. She is now in closed-door training. I don't care about it. After a while, I will also go back to closed-door training. Yi Shiwen could not help but explain, I will naturally call you all when I get married. Yi Kongming sighed. He was also a person who had been in a high position for a long time. He naturally understood what a political marriage represented. Although he did not know how powerful Yi Shiwen was, he could imagine it. But even so, Yi Shiwen still had to accept the fate of a political marriage. It was conceivable that the sex of both sides were extraordinary. Now, his son was flying higher and higher like an eagle. It was no longer a level that he could reach in the past. When he was still young, he could still lend a hand. But now, he had no choice but to silently support him. You came back at this time, it must be because the next thing will be very important, or very dangerous, Yi Kongming said. He knew Yi Shiwen's character very well. He was like a clockwork robot. His sharpness was unparalleled. No one could stop him. He had chosen to come back before the closed-door training. It must be because the next matter was very important. Or it might be very dangerous. So, he decided to come back. No. Yi Shiwen didn't say much because he didn't want them to worry. It's just that I might be in closed-door training for a long time. I miss my parents, so I came back to see them. Rumor has it that you've proven your Tao and become a god. Is this true? Xia Chuanxue asked. And Yi Shiwen nodded and said. He had nothing to hide from his family. This is incredible, this is incredible. My son has actually become a god. I've become a god's mother, Xia Chuanxue said with a smile. But I heard that many tens of thousands of years have passed. When you come out of the next closed-door training, your father and I might already be dead. You have to come back as soon as possible, Xia Chuanxue said with a sad expression. Lifespan was meaningless to Yi Shiwen, but it wasn't the same for them. She was no longer an ignorant woman. These years, she had relied on the resources left by Yi Shiwen to cultivate to the longevity realm. With a lifespan of tens of thousands of years, it seemed that the future was still very long. But no matter how long it was, it could be compared to the gods. At that time, they would still have to experience life and death. Thinking of this, she also felt a little sad. All right, what's the point of saying this in front of San Air? Everyone will die one day. We are not gods. We will die eventually. There's nothing much to say about this. Yi Kongming was open-minded and didn't want his wife to continue to be sad. Yi Shiwen just smiled and said, if it was in the past, he would indeed be worried about this problem. But now, he had another choice. Father, mother, don't worry. I have a way, Yi Shiwen said. What way? San Air, don't take the risk. If your mother and I die, then so be it. It's nothing. You can't risk yourself like this, Yi Kongming immediately said with vigilance. As his cultivation increased, his vision also increased. Naturally, he was very clear about the matters of the legendary god. Without achieving Tao, the human race would, at most, die for tens of thousands of years. There were some strange methods that might allow them to survive until the future generations. But obviously they were not normal methods, and they were not what he wanted. Don't worry, father. I have already thought of it. In the realm of gods there is a realm that can condense a divine kingdom. And in the divine kingdom, I can enlighten the Holy Spirit. These Holy Spirits are no different from when they were alive. They can cultivate and can live forever. Unless I die, otherwise these Holy Spirits will not die, Yi Shiwen said. This was the solution he had thought of. He had been worrying about this problem for a very long time, and he had even thought about whether he should forcefully enlighten everyone to prove his Tao. However, even an imperial emperor couldn't do this, let alone him. So, he found such a method after consulting the ancient book. However, this was the way of cultivation of the power of faith. He usually did not practice it. So, he had very little contact with it. He only learned about it later. As long as he cultivated to the Divine Lord realm, then he could enlighten his parents, brothers, sisters, and others into Holy Spirits. This kind of Holy Spirit was different from ordinary heroic spirit. They had independent consciousness and a powerful body. They could also cultivate by themselves. It was not impossible for Holy Spirits to achieve Tao. To enlighten a heroic spirit was only a matter of a thought. However, it was not easy to enlighten a Holy Spirit. It was equivalent to recreating a normal and complete life. This kind of thing could only be done by an emperor. The Divine Lord could only do it through trickery. They also had to pay a huge price. Therefore, the general gods would be very careful when enlightening a Holy Spirit. They would not enlighten them casually. However, for him, as long as he could make these relatives live forever, it was not a problem to pay a big price. He didn't need to think much about the things that ordinary people needed to consider. The only thing he needed to do was to deduce the cultivation to the Divine Lord realm. Fortunately, his parents were not older than him by a few hundred years. So, they still had thousands of years to carry out this matter. However, he didn't need to worry about it. His parents would live forever unless he died, and his divine kingdom would collapse. So, it would be best if they could achieve Tao in a long period of time. That should be very difficult. I have indeed read in the ancient books that it would consume a lot of energy to enlighten a Holy Spirit, Yi Kongming said. He had a flash of inspiration. He recalled that this matter had been mentioned in some information that he had read before. Let's not do it if that's the case. Xia Chuanxue promptly shook her head as she heard this. She didn't want to become an obstacle to her son. Moreover, she didn't want to drag Yi Shiwen down because of this. Father, mother, can the price be greater than losing you? Don't worry, I'm ready. Now I'm very close to that realm. As long as I'm given some time, I can reach that realm, Yi Shiwen said confidently. Although he was now only at the Eternal Realm middle stage, it was not very difficult to cultivate to the Eternal Realm late stage or even the peak. If not, he wouldn't have been able to defeat the masters at the peak of the Eternal Realm. What he was pursuing now was to deduce the combat power to the level of the Divine Lord of the Sage Realm while improving the realm. At that time, even if he faced the Divine Lord, he wouldn't have to worry. Yi Kongming didn't say much, but he was very clear that the stronger his son was, the more danger he would face. It was not because of the strength that the danger would be less. He had also heard that the Masters of Tao confirmation would only make a small step forward after 10,000 years. Yi Shiwen could progress to this point in just a few hundred years. He must have been continuously sharpened and had many fortuitous encounters. This kind of fortuitous encounter was bound to be accompanied by endless danger. Well, it's rare for my son to come back. Don't talk about these unhappy things. I'm still waiting to drink San Er's wedding wine. I want to be a grandmother and hold a grandson, Xia Chuanxue said excitedly. She was now putting aside everything. She only thought that San Er's marriage, which she had been worried about for hundreds of years, was finally finalized. She was happy. Although it was not the first time she was a grandmother, her heart was like the first time she heard the news. I'm going to call your eldest brother and second sister back, Xia Chuanxue said with a smile. She immediately went out of the courtyard and went to find Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue. The two families came to reunite. Yi Shiwen rarely came back. No matter what they were doing, she had to drag them all back. Although she was also a famous master of the true martial domain, at this time, she was no different from an ordinary mother. After Xia Chuanxue left, Yi Kongming was silent for a while and asked, San Er, tell me honestly, is this trip very dangerous? Yi Shiwen saw that his father seemed to be aware of it. He just didn't want to ask in front of his mother. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't hide it. He briefly talked about his own things over the years. Although those dangerous parts had been omitted as much as possible, Yi Kongming could still imagine what kind of danger it would be at that time. I can't help you with these things now. You can only rely on yourself. Yi Kongming sighed and said. What Yi Shiwen said was more dangerous than he had imagined. But in the future, you have to think twice before you do anything. Don't try to be brave. It's important to save your own life. If there is a chance in the future, bring Yi Qianqian back and let me and your mother see her. And Yi Shiwen nodded. San Er, you're back. The voice of the second sister came from outside the courtyard. It hadn't changed for hundreds of years. Chapter 2485. Yi Shiwen returned quietly without alerting anyone. Other than the Yi family, many acquaintances had already left. Huang Wuji and the others had also left for the ancient desolation. Huang Wuji was no longer the supreme school master of the true martial school since decades ago. There weren't many acquaintances here anymore. Compared to the true martial domain, the ancient desolation was undoubtedly more suitable for their development. Besides, with Yi Shiwen's influence in the ancient desolation, it would be easier for them to develop. Since that was the case, Yi Shiwen didn't bother to alert anyone. Besides, he would only be back for a month. But soon, a series of events shocked the people of the true martial domain. Many experts of the true martial school, who were originally stuck in the transcendent realm, had all broken through overnight. Moreover, they had broken through several realms. It seemed that the factor that was originally stuck in the realm had suddenly disappeared and no longer existed. Although Huang Wuji and the others had already surpassed the transcendent realm, that was with Yi Shiwen's help. It wasn't something that they could surpass on their own. After Yi Shiwen left, there was no such opportunity anymore. Now it was different. Now that they had broken through on their own, this matter quickly shocked the entire true martial domain. The situation of many transcendent realm experts breaking through together was too shocking. Could it be that the broken laws have been repaired? Now that the laws of the true martial domain and other worlds were broken, it caused them to be unable to break through. This matter was no longer a secret. However, when it came to matters like the broken laws of the world, it wasn't something that they could solve. Hence, some people followed Huang Wuji and left. The remaining people were also those old guys who had no hope of breaking through. These people all broke through overnight. The feeling that was suppressing them and the shackles that were strangling their necks were all broken overnight. Many people could feel that the laws of cultivation had been completely filled, giving them the ability to start cultivating. Overnight, everyone went crazy. Many of these people were veteran warriors who had cultivated for thousands of years. The depth of their accumulation was unimaginable. In just one night, all of them had broken through. Everyone was curious. Why were the laws that had been broken for tens of thousands of years suddenly repaired? There were no bottlenecks all of a sudden. In just a month's time, this news spread throughout the true martial domain's universe region. The transcendent realm experts of other worlds were also shocked. One after another, they tried to sense the complete principles. Many people reacted in an instant. Perhaps the true martial domain would be the ruler of this universe from now on. It wouldn't be like this. They wouldn't rely on their strength to suppress others. On the contrary, everyone would ask the true martial domain for help in the future. And the true martial domain would naturally become the leader. Some people were tempted to attack the true martial world and seize it. They couldn't allow the true martial university to monopolize it. However, they quickly dispelled this idea. Yi Shiwen might not be here, but the demigod that he had subdued was still here. So, it wouldn't be a problem for him to sweep through this universe. Yi Shiwen was here. At this time, no one knew that Yi Shiwen had come and gone. Only the people of Yi clan vaguely knew some secret. After he had left, this news slowly spread out. Everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had come back. Moreover, he had done a great deed of merit. Many of the older generation experts were so excited that tears streamed down their cheeks. In the true martial domain, no one had been able to break through to the transcendent realm for many years. Moreover, they were able to break through consecutively in such a short period of time. Some of them even broke through to the law manifestation realm. Other than the fact that their foundations and accumulations were extremely deep, the laws were the most active when they were repaired. Only then would they be able to sense the changes in the laws and evolve. Yi Shiwen was already a legend in the true martial domain. After today, his legend had become even more prominent. The legend of him becoming a god had become a matter of fact. Other than the gods, no one in this world would be able to do it. However, they didn't know that becoming a god didn't mean that one would be able to do it. Ordinary immortal realm experts wouldn't be able to do it. As a result, the Yi family had become a god family in many people's eyes. Many people were in awe of the Yi family. Not to mention the Yi family's deep foundation, even Yi Shiwen, who hadn't appeared for a long time, was feared by everyone. At this time, Yi Shiwen naturally did not know what everyone was thinking. He had already returned to the Hidden Valley. At this time, after a month of reporting and discussion, the titled kings who were in charge of the Hidden Valley had finally agreed to open that ancient path for Yi Shiwen. "You're finally back." The Lord of Flames saw Yi Shiwen as soon as he returned. "The Supreme Elders have agreed to let you use the ancient road. I'll open it for you." "Thank you." Under the Lord of Flames' guidance, Yi Shiwen entered the depths of the Blood Prison. The entrance to the ancient road was located in the depths of the Blood Prison. After listening to the Lord of Flames' explanation, Yi Shiwen found out that the formation of the blood prison was closely related to the ancient road. The two of them arrived at the end of the blood prison. Along the way, they encountered many ancient existences. Yi Shiwen's divine telekinesis directly swept out. It was his first time seeing the situation inside the blood prison. Yi Shiwen had long known that there might be deities inside the blood prison. He had only been able to wander around the periphery of the blood prison when he was still a demigod. However, he still felt slightly apprehensive when he sensed the many ancient deities that were in deep slumber. When they arrived at the end of the blood prison, there were still a few unfathomable old antiques hiding. Although Yi Shiwen couldn't see them, he could feel their existence. Why did the Lord of Flames bring someone here again? Could it be that someone has fulfilled the basic conditions to open the ancient road? That's not easy. In this era, there's actually someone who meets the harsh requirements. This is also a good thing. It means that our hidden valley has a successor. Powerful geniuses are emerging one after another. This is a good thing. At the end of the blood prison was a sea of blood. It was an endless sea of blood. However, it didn't have the fishy smell of ordinary blood. On the contrary, there was a faint fragrance wafting in the air. The formation of the entire blood prison had slowly expanded from this sea of blood. Just this sea of blood was equivalent to the size of the true martial world. Therefore, it was hard to tell how huge the blood prison would be after it had expanded from this sea of blood. However, the closer they got to the sea of blood, the more they could feel an unprecedented pressure crushing down on them. Even the Lord of Flames seemed to feel this kind of pressure. His figure wasn't as natural as it was at the beginning. However, when he looked at Yi Shiwen, he was a little surprised. Yi Shiwen wasn't affected at all. Could it be that he had some treasure on him that could resist this pressure? This was because only the king-level powerhouses were unaffected by this blood sea. They could freely enter and exit this blood sea. It was obvious that there was a huge gap between Yi Shiwen and the king-level powerhouses, so there must be some other reason for this. Yi Shiwen also felt strange in his heart. When he had just entered the blood sea, he had indeed felt an extremely strong repulsive force. But soon, the heart of the blood realm in his body began to emit a kind of blood-red light. It protected him within it, so that he was not affected by this coercion. The Lord of Flames pinched a seal. The originally calm sea of blood started to churn violently. In the sky, huge waves that were thousands of meters tall appeared. Then, the surface of the entire sea of blood seemed to have been split apart by a pair of huge hands. A path was forcefully created. A path that led to the depths of the sea of blood. "Let's go in quickly. My spiritual power can't hold on for long," said the Lord of Flames solemnly. Yi Shiwen was shocked. With the strength of the Lord of Flames, breaking a world was something that could be done in minutes. Yet, he actually said that the sea of blood couldn't hold on for long. To him, this was undoubtedly a shock. The Lord of Flames led the way. The two of them quickly penetrated through the sea of blood. The entire sea of blood was tens of thousands of kilometers deep. If it was anyone else, it would take God knows how long to dive down. When they reached the bottom of the sea of blood, Yi Shiwen realized that it was a blood-colored land. It was as if it was soaked in blood. There was a spirit array at the bottom of the sea. Looking at the spirit array, Yi Shiwen could tell that it was a teleportation array. However, this teleportation array was far more complicated than any teleportation array that he had encountered before. He actually couldn't see through it. He could barely tell that it was just a teleportation array. This teleportation array is the teleportation array that opens the ancient road, said the Lord of Flames. I will open this teleportation array next. You will be teleported there directly. I hope that the next time I open it, I will be able to see you walk out alive. The Lord of Flames was serious. He wasn't just casually giving instructions. He had been to this ancient road before. Therefore, he was very clear about how dangerous this ancient road was. I will. Yi Shiwen nodded. Before you go in, I will give you a gift. If you have the guts to use it inside, then go ahead. The Lord of Flames flipped his palm and a soft vest appeared. The color was ugly and it was completely black. The design was also very rough. It looked just like a vest without any decorations. This is... Yi Shiwen took the vest. Initially, he didn't care much about it. However, he instantly felt the weight of this vest. So heavy! Yi Shiwen's current strength was extremely strong. However, this vest still made him feel heavy. It was even heavier than the ancient god mountain. This is, asked Yi Shiwen. This is a cultivation vest. In ancient times, the Almighty used it to cultivate. It can adjust the weight as you wish and seal your strength. The Lord of Flames looked at Yi Shiwen and said with a faint smile. Chapter 2486. Yi Shiwen finally understood what the Lord of Flames meant when he said to use it inside if he had the gut. If he wore this cultivation armor, his strength would be sealed. This ancient road was already filled with danger. Needless to say, he was simply courting death. Thank you, Your Honor. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and kept the cultivation armor. This wasn't a simple armor. It meant that he had taken on a certain kind of danger. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. After a few hundred years, I believe that you will be reborn. The Lord of Flames nodded his head in satisfaction. One had to know that this cultivation armor looked like it was made casually on the street. However, how could it be an ordinary armor that could seal the strength of a deity? It wasn't a divine tool, but it was more precious and powerful than many divine tools. Even the materials were very rare. Therefore, ordinary people didn't have the opportunity to wear the cultivation armor. It was enough for Yi Shiwen to understand the deeper meaning behind it. All right, I'll activate the formation. You can go by yourself. The Lord of Flames formed a complicated hand seal. The entire formation started to emit a shocking light. Yi Shiwen knew that the formation had been activated. Without any hesitation, he rushed into the formation. Swoosh! His body was instantly teleported away. You must come back alive. The Flame Sovereign spoke slowly. He didn't know if it was right or wrong to send him on this path. This was because since ancient times, from the moment this path was discovered, countless people had died on this path. At the start, it was opened to the public on a large scale. Later on, the few titled kings were forced to turn this place into a training ground for the strongest geniuses. This was also to prevent other insignificant deaths and injuries. Yi Shiwen's vision turned black. Before he had time to think about it, he had already arrived in a blood-red world. It was barren and desolate. It felt like he was in a blood prison. This is the ancient road. Yi Shiwen looked around. This world was very wide. The blood in the sky was very dense. It was more than 10 times denser than in the blood prison. What kind of environment would breed what kind of people? The more abundant the energy, the stronger the creatures that could be bred. As the saying goes, great men and great places are blessed. In the blood prison, there were many powerful beings comparable to gods. Although they could not comprehend the laws of heaven and earth and live forever like gods, their lifespans were still very long. Moreover, their innate divine abilities even surpassed many gods. This kind of powerful sentient life form didn't understand the Tao, didn't cultivate in magic, and only used brute force to be fierce. Naturally, it couldn't compare to the free and unfettered deities in this world, but it couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, the blood energy here was more than 10 times denser than in the blood prison. There might really be extremely ferocious existences here. He looked at the cultivation vest in his hand. Did he need to wear a cultivation vest in a place like this? After thinking for a while, he took a deep breath. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Without enough tempering, How could he make enough progress in a mere 1,000 years? 1,000 years was too short for a god. Yi Shiwen directly put on the cultivation vest, and instantly felt his body sink, as if a mountain was pressing down on his body. His spiritual force entered the avatar, and he immediately understood all the mysteries of the avatar. He injected his spiritual power into it, and the cultivation vest immediately began to activate. He suddenly felt the pressure on his body increasing, and soon his strength was constantly suppressed. He could feel that his combat power was also declining at an alarming rate. Undead Realm Peak, Undead Realm Late Stage, Undead Realm Middle Stage, Undead Realm Early Stage. His combat power instantly fell from the Undead Realm Peak to the Undead Realm Early Stage. The ability that he could exert was greatly limited. Even if Yi Shiwen's strength didn't come from his gilded tyrant form, the ratio of strength decline would be even more exaggerated. Moreover, this avatar also needed him to input spiritual power at any time and place to maintain it. His original majestic spiritual power was reduced by half in one breath. It was not much more than a normal person, let alone compared to his peak. In this way, he could not use many big moves in the future. Even if he used it, the power would plummet. It really is an all-round suppression of strength. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes, but his expression became more firm. He immediately took a step forward and flew forward. Although his strength was very severely suppressed, he still had the combat power of the Undead Realm Early Stage. With one stride, he crossed a huge mountain range at an extremely fast speed. He was like a savage running. Roar! There was a loud roar. Yi Shiwen had just landed in the mountain range behind him, and a huge violent ape sprang out of it. It turned into a mass of blood light and chased after him on the spot. Boom! This violent ape blasted out a punch, and a loud roar accompanied by endless waves of blood washed over. An unparalleled fist energy swept out and directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen's head. Yi Shiwen immediately turned around and was blasted in the chest on the spot. His whole body flew out upside down. Although he had already reacted very early, his body could not keep up with the reaction speed at all. His body was like a star hanging on it, and all the gravity fell on his body, making his speed slow down. Damn beast! Yi Shiwen's body flew out upside down like a meteor. That violent ape strode like a meteor, and unexpectedly chased after him in mid-air, stomping down on him. It wanted to trample Yi Shiwen to death in mid-air. Yi Shiwen often used this trick against people, but he did not expect that it would also be used. Bang! It was not that Yi Shiwen did not want to resist, but the speed was too fast. He only had enough time to put his hands on his chest to protect it, and that foot stomped down on him. The terrifying power actually broke his arm. He directly smashed into the ground, and a huge crack appeared. Damn, it's even more ferocious than Yuan Hong. Yi Shiwen had not experienced such a fierce battle for a long time. With the strength of his gilded tyrant form, there were very few people who could suppress him to this extent. Even those who were at a higher level than him would be beaten to death on the spot. Now, his gilded tyrant form was also suppressed by the cultivation vest, and now he could only face it head-on. Roar! In the sky, that violent ape grinned, and directly trampled down its foot. It let out a strange cry, and wanted to tear Yi Shiwen alive. This trick again, beast, don't be too arrogant. Yi Shiwen roared, and his hands instantly recovered at lightning speed. He then grabbed the trampling foot and threw it away. Whoosh! This violent ape was thrown out like a meteor, and fiercely crashed into a series of mountains, sweeping out a huge crack. Yi Shiwen did not take advantage of the victory to pursue the attack. He was constantly panting, and blood flowed down from his arm, and the wound gradually healed. Even his Phoenix regeneration technique was suppressed by the cultivation vest. Otherwise, this level of injury could be healed in an instant. In the twinkling of an eye, that violent ape's figure disappeared again, and directly attacked. Fast, fast to the point of inconceivable. Yi Shiwen was not to be outdone. He did not just use his body, but also added the flickering thunder step, and his figure instantly transcended. His whole body rushed out and collided with the violent ape. Boom! 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 In an instant they collided hundreds and thousands of times. Both sides flew out upside down, and blood splashed out from their bodies. That violent ape's entire arm was blasted on the spot, and it was the first to be unable to withstand the bombardment of countless high-frequency attacks. And Yi Shiwen's arm also had cracks, and one could imagine the intensity of such a battle. However, in the end, Yi Shiwen's gilded tyrant form was stronger. At this time, Yi Shiwen could not care about anything else. Let's kill this beast first before we talk. Bang! He suddenly stepped on the ground, and his figure leaped out like a rocket, and directly hit the violent ape's body. The violent ape had not yet stood firm and was sent flying. This violent ape was not a god, and it did not have the magical power to instantly restore its arm that had been blasted into pieces by Yi Shiwen. It screamed, and its body almost exploded in mid-air. Now, it's my turn to return it to you, Yi Shiwen said, and his figure flashed. His whole body directly flew into the sky, and fiercely trampled down. Bang! Another loud sound was heard, and the violent ape's body was directly torn apart in the air, and it exploded on the spot, and it screamed again and again. Huff huff! Yi Shiwen couldn't help but gasp for breath after smashing this violent ape. Originally, this level of battle could not affect him, but it was different now. His cultivation was completely restricted by the cultivation vest, and even dealing with such a violent ape had injured him. Even in the God Burial Star Ocean, it was unlikely that something like this would happen. However, even if his cultivation was restricted, this violent ape was still very powerful, or it would not be able to do this. After a while, Yi Shiwen's injuries were almost healed. He finally let out a breath of turbid air. This is the only way to cultivate meaningful. He looked towards the depths of the ancient road. According to what the Flame Lord had told him previously, the real test of this ancient road was not here, but in the middle of the ancient road. There were 9 powerful tests, and since ancient times, no one had been able to pass all 9 of them at once. No matter how powerful one was, it was impossible to pass all of them at once, because there would be existences that were similar or even more powerful than one's own strength. Therefore, whether one's strength was strong or not was meaningless there. Only by having strength that surpassed one's own realm could one go very far, and finally pass all 9 tests. However, it was said that no one had been able to do it since ancient times. Yi Shiwen's target was there, and he still had to pass through layers of dangers. Let's go! He shouted, and his whole body crossed the void like a meteor. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.